So the first thing we're going to do is log into CSIS. And as a reminder, whenever you log into CSIS, I'm going to be you. Whenever you log into CSIS, you must always ask yourself, what am I doing in here? Okay. That is going to be the first thing that you ask yourself. What project am I working in? What am I doing in here? Because asking yourself that question first and foremost will serve you well as you continue to work into CSIS. You'll know that you're working in the right project. You'll know that you are accepting referrals or entering data as the right project.
Right.
That is so common, and it is across the COC. And nationwide. I don't think it's a local issue. It's something that we just forget, and we're trying to move at fast paces and get in and get out and get done. But that's where we make our little common missteps. And so whenever you log in, be sure to ask yourself, what am I doing? What project am I working in? And that's when you're going to select your EDA, enter data as. That is the very first thing that you want to do for this project. So you're fortunate, you have just your rapid rehousing projects that you're working in. So you often are going to begin as you receive referrals in your program pre-enrollment program, TSA Sarasota. And again, I could train specific to your job. It might be that internally at Salvation Army Sarasota, you guys have, like Andy's responsible for handling the referrals and enrolling them in pre-enrollment. Okay, that's kind of what I was presuming. And then upon the client engaging and accepting the referral, and you actually getting your hands on the client and discussing the program with them, then you exit them from that into everyone's home or bonus. But what I'm just going to train from the beginning because it's important to understand all the different pieces that go into entering a client into rapid rehousing and why.
I think they're starting the case plan in pre-enrollment. Teresa, okay.
Yeah, this is where my confusion was. So the way that they seem to be doing it is they're keeping it and using pre-enrollment until they get housed and then switching it to everyone's home.
No,
so that's not how it should be, right?
No, and that's not even what they're doing. So
no, okay.
No, once they're in pre-enrollment, the case manager meets with them, and then we have a roundtable discussion at some point whether or not we're going to accept the referral, meaning we're going to keep the referral. Once we decide we're going to keep the referral, that's when they get put into everyone's home or bonus, at which point I look for housing, and then they'll get housed, and then on after that.
See,
but I think they're.
But like when we met, and obviously it's just I've been working with Holly. What she made a mistake, she said, because she was putting it in and she said it should have been in pre-enrollment. I was getting really confused. Or she put it in pre-enrollment and it was supposed to be in So actually, once we see the client, at that point, and we talk to them for the first time, they now get entered into Is that correct? No.
No, and I think pre-enrollment is confusing. I almost wish both of the other case managers were here right now, because I think pre-enrollment is confusing everybody. It's new for us, Teresa. I don't know if you are aware of that, but I do believe though that they are supposed to go ahead and start the case plan in pre-enrollment.
It makes sense that they would. So the way that pre-enrollment, and I'm actually going to get out of the live site so I don't have to, honestly, just so I don't have to delete all the stuff that we're going to add today. So with pre-enrollment started, just as a little background, on why we have pre-enrollment projects, if you weren't aware, and what their function is and the purposes. It's always good to have the history, right? So way before coordinated entry, which is your access points and clients being prioritized, there were anybody that came in to a rapid rehousing project would be entered into that project. So whether they actually followed through with the program, or whether they were the right fit, or whether they that housing intervention was appropriate to their needs, they were enrolled. And so this is before coordinated entry. It was like clients came in and say, hey, I need rental assistance. The agency would enter that client into rapid rehousing projects regardless of the actual plan to serve them. And then so you would have, and this isn't specific to Salvation Army Sarasota, this is how the program operated across the nation. We were also having clients pre-coordinated entry that otherwise would have been able to self-resolve on their own. They were coming in because they had a lease in hand, they just needed first, last, and security, bing, bang, boom, out the door. Well, what was happening was that those aren't the clients that we're seeing every day on the corner and that are constantly cycling through the system, where we need to actually put our hands on those clients, identify those clients, and get them introduced to the appropriate housing intervention services. So flash forward a year later, coordinated entry is working, but still we're having some issues in that clients, again, are being enrolled upon receiving a referral, regardless of whether the client is engaged, interested, ready for housing, or that appropriate housing intervention type. So that still, we were reducing the total number of clients that were entering the projects, but we weren't reducing some of the other aspects, like the time by the amount of time in between the client's enrollment into rapid rehousing to the number of days. Because if we're entering clients into a rapid rehousing project before we're even talking to them, we don't know if they're really ready to be housed. We don't know if, sure, their VI SPDAT says one thing, but we're talking to this person and we can see that the story is definitely different than what the VI SPDAT and the access point is telling us. So that's where the project pre-enrollments came into play, is that we're able to have these clients accept the referrals for the meantime, identify the clients, and hold them in this waiting room for us to engage with the clients, because oftentimes access points are done, but then, the client disappears. Maybe they come up on the referral list, but then we haven't seen them in the system for 3 months. Well, they might still be out there. We just have to actually identify where they are. So the project pre-enrollment gives this client gives the agency a place to put the client while we work to engage with them. And then also, like Jessica was saying, while the agency can assess the client individually, also using the information provided in the VI SPDAT and the access point to determine if this intervention is appropriate for them. And from there, upon the client being interested and ready for housing, because we don't say want housing, we say ready for housing, ready for housing, and the agency having the capacity. That was the other part, obviously. We can send the referrals all we want. We can send 1 million referrals to an agency. But if you guys only have the capacity to case manage and to house 10 clients, then, sending 20 referrals, 30 referrals, it's kind of a waste of time. We want to make sure that we're getting our clients in, assessed appropriately, and then connected to the appropriate housing intervention, or declining the referral and identifying why. And that all happens in your program pre-enrollment. And that's where the case notes, when you begin, so when you start a program pre-enrollment with the client, oftentimes, and it makes sense to me, and of course you guys are the boots on the ground and Jessica would know more, but when we do accept a referral and we start an entry for that client in that program pre-enrollment, we may not be necessarily starting that entry live and asking those questions with the client live, but we're definitely going back to update that entry based on the information that's provided when it's provided.
Okay.
So a lot of times it makes sense in my brain and functionally for you guys to have the program pre-enrollment be able to be edited, that entry. So you start the entry exit, but that's not necessarily because the client's in front of you agreeing into housing. The entry exit is started because you receive that referral. You're going to go back once you've identified the client and the client has been assessed and edit that entry.
Okay.
If you happen to have the client in the shelter and you can assess them live at the time of program pre-enrollment entry, awesome. But that may not necessarily always happen. You still want to show the system that this client is being assessed in program pre-enrollment. You just haven't met with them live yet. It just depends. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Jessica, but that is something that you would be able to do, is start that entry and go back and edit it upon receiving that information. Okay. All right, so let me see who I still have in here. Let's see if Chrissy Teagan's still in here. Okay. Okay. So I'm Shelly. I'm doing this fast because you guys wouldn't necessarily see this. Okay, so I'm Andy Brady right now. Let me zoom in. And he sees, this is Andy Brady's counts report. He sees this incoming referral of Brandon Test for a rapid rehousing program.
Okay.
Coming from 1 by 1. And you should only be receiving referrals that come from 1 by 1 list to pre-enrollment program. So if you ever are on that side of things where you are looking at the referred by and are looking at the referrals, sometimes we get erroneous referrals come through. And just keep in mind that your agency is very effective when working with the system. They receive all of the referrals through 1 by 1. They don't take referrals through side doors. That's the biggest part of coordination that sometimes we don't always have effective workings. Sometimes clients sneak in through that side door and it's like, wait a minute, where did this person come from? So your agency is very effective with that. So what Andy does, he's going to click on this client ID of this referral, and he's going to open the referral, and you'll have a one sheet on this after the fact. Okay. He's going to go to service transactions and view entire service history, and he sees this 1 by 1 referral. So he's going to service pending, either partially met or service pending, because he wants to tell Shelly, and this depends, he might just enroll the client into program pre-enrollment, and then upon whether that whether the client is entered into rapid rehousing, then he would go back and edit this outcome of need. But we're going to say that this is how he is operating. He's saying service pending, because this is what you guys are doing. You're going to identify and enroll the client in pre-enrollment until you know whether it's the appropriate service. So Andy tells Teresa to enroll client ID 1, because Brandon's the only one in here, into pre-enrollment. So you're going to search your client ID, or you can search your client name of Brandon. The very first thing you're going to do, you always, and this should already be done for you, but sometimes, you know, our access point intake workers aren't as diligent, and we just need to make sure that we are covering all of our bases and ensuring that the client has a release of information and that it is scanned and uploaded. Otherwise, we should not be talking about the client. We have no evidence or no supporting documentation stating that the client has agreed to share their information. So your eyes always, and I typically, but again, we're in the test site, this information will all be filled out, but we have some extra work to do because very little information was provided upon access point entry. But you should always be checking your basis and being diligent. So we're going to have the client sign an ROI. It is advisable. Yes, you can add an ROI from the summary page, but you should always be working under the tab where everything is. It's just a little helpful hint that if you're going to work and add an ROI, then work under the ROI tab. If you're going to add a service, to work under the service transactions tab and not from the summary page. The summary page is simply for you to get a glimpse of the history of Brandon's workings in CSIS, where he's been, what he's doing, and his different activities in the system. So we're going to first go to our ROI and add that. The only ROI that we need in our system is the universal ROI. There will be other agencies that may still have an internal ROI that they utilize, but fortunately for yourself, Salvation Army Sarasota only utilizes the universal ROI. So you've scanned and uploaded it. We're going to search, because your default, the project that you're entering data as will instantly default as the provider, but we know that we don't need that provider. We just need the universal ROI. So we're going to add that here, and we're going to remove our pre-enrollment. So the only ROI that's in here is the universal, the only provider that's in here is the universal ROI. And then the release is granted. And I'm actually going to backdate until I have to set my backdate mode, but. So we have our signed statement from the client, and you are Teresa Tamburo. From there, we're going to click our paperclip, because you want to have that awesome support documentation. You have the client's ROI scanned and uploaded. Well, scanned. So now we're going to upload it. We find it on our folder for our client ID and ROI and hit upload. So now that client is safe to go to any other agency and not shop, but not have to sign the universal ROI again.
Right.
Because of your diligence. Thank you, Teresa. I am going to backdate to 1101 because obviously we want to show the progress in the client, and have a better idea of the actual activities and how they happen in CSIS. Okay, but typically you guys don't backdate. You guys are often working live. You can backdate if there are things that need to be collected and need to be added for the integrity of the data in the system. Please backdate. Timeliness is a small factor in the grand scheme of things. As long as the data's in there, we're happy. There are days and times where we forget things. It just happens. But we typically work live within the system.
Right. Okay.
So, okay. From here, and I'm not sure if, I think I trained you, Teresa, but just use your client, these tabs, these grayed out tabs, use it as your workflow. You know, you start with your summary, and then if you wanted to review the client's profile, I'm actually going to add some of this information real quick. This isn't where you would be adding.
Right.
But I'm just going to do it for the interest of.
Right, because usually all that is there already.
Yeah.
Honestly. Okay.
Okay. So yeah. And this also gives you, this is your client profile and your summary page. When you receive a referral for a client, you can look at the different information that's in here. If the client had a phone number in here, we're going to pretend that the access point, because we trained them so well to always ask for email addresses and phone numbers, that this information was outside, was actually already in here. Because this is where we're going to look to see if the client has, obviously the client doesn't have a residence yet,
right.
But we've trained our access point intake workers to identify where the client stays regularly. Our clients, just like the rest of us, we're all creatures of habits. We love our comforts, and there are certain areas where clients are more comfortable staying, and they know that they won't be bothered. So we know that this client is often located outside on the TSAS bench, and he actually does have a phone number, but he's just not sure how many minutes are on it and how often, you know. And then we're actually going to say that the access point did you a solid and added his sister's phone number. But she's up in Hillsborough, and she doesn't want to, she can't help him. She has her own family, la 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 la.
Okay,
but
can I get a quick? So should we always be checking this first to make sure all that information is there, or should we just assume that's all there? And it's
so never assume anything, but it's definitely something that you should be checking on here, because when we've been training since the origination of coordinated entry, when we've been training and prior to basic skills and anything, we train our intake workers and people collecting data to add this information. It is a tool for you to use to assist you and your team identifying where the client is. Because right now we don't have an outreach worker that can go out and knows where, oh, I know Brandon Test. He's always at this place or at that time. This will help you work with the client and try and identify where he might be. So yes, this is something that you could be and should be utilizing for your own benefit. Otherwise, you're going in blind. If there's no information in here, which is why we train our access point intake workers, like whatever it is, if the client is over by, an encampment in 301 and you need to connect with County Hot or something, or call Nick, our guy, maybe he can go out there and assist with locating the client. But we do train to always ask for some kind of whereabouts and some kind of phone number, because it will save an immense amount of time, especially if the client has a phone that if they're connected to Wi-Fi, they can receive calls.
Right.
Or if they have minutes, they can receive calls or text
Mhm.
messaging. You can text message. Clients may not get it right away, but once they connect to Wi-Fi, they can receive those messages.
Okay.
Just like with Maria Test, you see that she's an emergency contact. Well, we know that the diversion attempt has failed. Maybe we can try it again while we connect with Maria Test. But I mean, if your brother was homeless and an agency called you saying, hey, we have a rapid rehousing, we have a referral for your brother to house him, Maria is going to be like, he's on my Facebook. I'll send him a message. There are COCs that use very innovative technologies, not like Facebook's innovative, but using that messenger system to connect with clients and identify their locations. We're not there yet, but the sister, the emergency contact, she can be like, yeah, I'm talk to him on Facebook. Whenever he connects to the internet, I'll let him know that you guys are looking for him. And that's just another way that we can shorten that time in which we're trying to locate the client.
Right. Okay.
If there's no information in here, you guys are, I mean, you're really walking around blind, and it's not
Right.
helpful to the client. It's not helpful to the COC. It's not helpful to your agency. So yes, always look here. When I managed the veterans by name list, and we would have veterans that just haven't been in the system, they were like almost inactive, I would go to that emergency contact, and Teresa, I cannot tell you how many times I would call family members and they're like, yeah, he's with me right now. We're in, Montana, or we're up in Ohio, and I took him in. He called me very desperate and he's fine. And I'm like, okay, so he's not going to want to be housed, right? And it's just one of those things. It's like the miracle messages that we have presented at COC. They try and connect. They're like PIs that connect with people looking for their family members.
Right.
So yes, short response, yes. Use this area to, and then you can also look to see your client notes. Client notes here under the client profile. Any activities that, not activities, but any notes that the client maybe had been working with other COC members, they would be listed here if that service provider had added a note that they wanted everybody to see. So even if you wanted to write a note, and it just depends again on, client referred to TSAS, working to ID location of client to enroll. Let me see.
So whenever Andy gives you a referral, or me and Andy give you a referral, you'll open them in pre-enrollment, but before you start a case plan with them, because you haven't met them yet, you're going to put all of your attempts to find them and contact them under those where she's showing you.
Okay.
So you'll put a date, called, sister, blah, blah, blah. Reached out to City Hot, reached out to County Hot, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
You're going to make sure that you attempt all, that you note all of your attempts to get a hold of them. And that's where you'll do that at. Because you haven't started a case plan yet, because you haven't seen the person yet.
And that would be under the client profile, or right?
Yes, client profile, and then down to the client notes.
So also everything else should be in there. So the birth date, social security number, all of that. Do we need to be checking that, or just that again is definitely going to be there?
Whatever's in there, you can. Whatever is in there, you can. Because you haven't met with the client,
right?
I mean, you'll get that information verified as you work with the client.
Okay.
So you just it will be in here, hopefully,
right?
But you can't ascertain or presume to know whether it's true or not. You worry about that once you have actually engaged with the client, because the client's going to eventually need to provide documents to confirm who he is and confirm like his ID, his social security card. That might be a part of your case management process that you are, getting him funds to go to the DMV to get an ID because his was stolen or whatever the case may be. There's these little pieces of getting the client document ready so that when Jessica identifies housing, you've got these pieces of supporting documentation all lined up, and it's not, oh, the client needs an ID to move into housing. What? Like, no, you already know that because you yourself have moved into housing with before. So yeah, you can see the information here, but you'll worry about verifying its legitimacy on receiving those documents yourself. That's part of your case management process and getting the client document ready. I believe when I send you all these documents and this recording and such, you'll be able to I'll send the FHC trainings, and there's some really great like pre-housing webinars that assist you in working with clients and getting them document ready to be going into housing, and creative tools and how to do that. So
that's awesome.
It should just be on FHC's website, but that was part of the rapid rehousing training. I think Jessica, you went to it. It was like 2 years ago.
Is that the Florida Housing Coalition?
Yeah, Florida Housing.
Yeah, I think I went on there trying to just find any information I could. So I was just kind of
bouncing around. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's I'll send you the website. So so we've gone in here, and like Jessica said, you're going to want it before while you're still working to engage with the client, because you haven't met with the client, you're going to add notes. And then that way, it's all about showing your work, right? We're going back to like Algebra 1. You want to show your work, and you want to show how you got to this process. The more detail and the more information that you can put in our system, the better that we'll be able, and your supervisors will be able to, they won't go, what's Teresa been doing all day? Because they'll be able to go and look back and see what Teresa's been doing all day. It's very important. Go ahead, Teresa.
No, I'm sorry, but because if I don't ask, I'll forget the question. So I call the phone number, try and get in touch, leave a message, because client doesn't pick up. So then I would go into and add a note at the data and say, try to contact this client. Okay. All right.
CMTT. I mean, these are, you can write in shorthand if you want, but
okay.
Something to that effect.
Right. Got it.
And then our process, Teresa, so if you're unable to locate them or contact them through what's in CSIS, you're always going to email the case managers with City Hot, County Hot, and Nick Bell for outreach. And I'll go over that with you, but that's our other line of communication if we can't find somebody. So.
Okay. Well, this is good to know, because I didn't know we do this. So.
Yeah. There's a lot. I mean, there's, especially if you're starting at a place where maybe we're like in the middle of like, you got a bunch of referrals, or you just did, and you're in, it's always a weird, especially at Suncoast Partnership, our diversion specialist started a month before the coronavirus and the CDC eviction moratorium took place. So all these people that would typically be calling, she's like, what am I supposed to be doing? Because nobody is needing to get diverted because nobody's getting kicked out of their house. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we'll contact City Hot, County Hot, Nick Bell, and don't forget our girl
Jasmine. No? Yes, Jasmine. She's in Northport.
Yep.
Okay.
So maybe you can. A lot of times like I said before, our clients are creatures of habit. And if they don't have regular activity, like you don't see that the client is in, let me go to their summary page. Like you could see the services, if there's a laundry list of services from down south, then you can more than likely presume, especially if they're recent services, that the client's still down south, because it's quite a trek to get from Northport to Salvation Army Sarasota,
Right.
or even North County. That's quite a trek, even with a car. So
Right. No, yeah.
You're going to be able to, but maybe the client has a service yesterday from the community feeding program at your Salvation Army Sarasota location. So he's somewhere in this
Oh,
area.
okay.
And you'll
I
be
got
able
you.
to kind of, that's when you can pinpoint who can assist you, especially, with Nick and the city and county high. I know that they're still regularly doing their outreach and they're still walking around. Well, are they? I don't know. Are they? Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm missing Pete, and I'm missing.
Gonna go with yes.
I don't know what's going down in Sarasota anymore, but typically they're in that area, and you know who to contact first.
Okay.
Especially if you see South County activities, your client is very unlikely that your client is going to be up in this area.
Sarasota. Okay.
Because again, creatures of habit, creature comforts, and you're not going to make the trek up to Salvation Army Sarasota. But Jasmine works down there. She knows the spaces. She might know Brandon right off the bat. Oh, yeah, I saw him yesterday. And then she can assist with getting Brandon transported to the shelter to potentially stay in a bed, or however you guys handle that from there. Okay. So all of this happens before we're even enrolling the client in rapid rehousing. And this is days, we're talking about, we're in CSIS on day 1, but this could be day 4 or 5, where if you had entered that client right away, I'm trying to think, we have a system performance measure that our clients, from the time that they're entered into rapid rehousing project to the time they get housed, HUD has a system performance measure, meaning that they are measuring the effectiveness of the program, that client is housed in under 60 days.
Oh, wow.
So as soon as you start that enrollment into rapid rehousing, that clock is quite literally ticking. So this is why program pre-enrollments also came into play. We can't enroll every client that we get referred to rapid rehousing for a multitude of reasons, but also we are cutting ourselves short if we're enrolling our clients as soon as we get them. If they're not
rapid rehousing, right?
If they're not even interested, we don't know where they are, we can't be measuring against ourselves.
Right.
And as an example, Teresa, we have referrals that we opened back in September that we're still trying to locate, and they've been, we've had those people for 60 days and we're still trying to find them. So had we opened them directly into EH in September, that clock already started ticking and we're already at 60 days and we can't even, you know what I mean? So
exactly.
That's why we do it that way.
No, that's good to know. I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's let me a lot of the reasons that so this is our community dashboard, and you can look at this on CSIS. But when we're talking about, this is that days between entry into a housing intensive project for rapid rehousing and residential move-in date. So that's fancy way of how many days did it take from the time they entered to the time they got housed. In 2018, we were at 57 days. We were not serving the hardest to serve in 2018. We were serving clients with lease in hand, and we were kind of inching towards that coordinated entry, hardest to serve clients.
Okay.
As you can see, that number jumped almost 30 more days in 2019, where we are serving those hardest to serve, where we are
trying to locate them.
Exactly. And then by the end of FY20, we're at 83 days. But in reality, I mean, myself, and I don't know about yourselves, but when I'm looking for housing, I don't typically, it takes a while to identify a house that you really like. And
Right.
I'm a, functioning told the job. So, we're talking about housing our clients that have a lot of needs and have, they're hard to locate, and you're working for them, and you're their client essentially. So
a lot of them are very picky about their housing as well.
Right. And I
And it's
know,
client choice. So
right. And how many days do you give? Is there an amount of days that they have to just like at what like?
For me, I am a big proponent of client choice, because the idea of rapid rehousing is that this is medium term. Let's say medium term. Ideally, if we're housing the right people, we're saying 6 to 9, 12 months, with the potential of receiving up to 24 months. We never want to enroll the client with the presumption that they're going to be served for 24 months, because that totally negates the purpose of them enrolling in rapid rehousing, right? So if we're presuming that this client is going to eventually take over their lease and pay for their own rent, which is the whole point of rapid rehousing, then we need to be providing them the options out there that are available,
Right.
that
That
are
they can.
affordable,
Right.
that are available, to house them in a place that they're comfortable with. Because when we house clients to get them in and get them out and off assistance, if they're not happy, they will leave. They have if you're not happy living there somewhere, Teresa, you're going to find a way out of your lease. You're going to find a way to cancel your lease, or especially if you had no buy-in in the first place. What's it
you just leave. You don't even cancel your lease. You just abandon your apartment and go back into the woods, and nobody ever sees you again.
Wow.
And that's what happens.
You have no buy-in to this apartment.
Right.
Whereas if you are taking every initiative and every, available opportunity. So the short answer is that no, there should not be a time frame on, or the amount of housing units to show a client. I had a rapid rehousing provider. They're no longer with us, but I had a rapid rehousing provider venting to me, well, I showed this client 5 different places. I said, okay, well, we have where we can record these different rental unit offers and what the result was. Why didn't the client like it? What was the issue? And I said, you worked in real estate beforehand? The person, yeah. I said, well, how many was the most houses you ever showed somebody? Oh, I worked for my friend. He had me show him over 100 places over the course of a year. I said, well, the client is no different. The client, it's presumed that the client is going to take over this lease. So it should be in a place where they're connected to, close to their social networks, whether you agree with them or not.
Right.
Ease of access of transportation. If you house clients by themselves in areas where they're not familiar with, they will leave and go back to the area that they are familiar with.
Where they're
this
comfortable.
has been proven over and over again throughout the COC, throughout the nations. We have veterans oftentimes, because our veterans actually don't have time limits for SSVF either. So they can keep cycling, and that's okay. We should just give all the veterans vouchers, but I'm not going to go into that. With clients that are, you've been in a social environment, because homelessness can be quite social. You guys have your clicks, you have it just depends on the person. If you house a social person in an isolated element, they're going to walk out. They're going to
that's happened to me in the past, because when I worked at the Homeless Coalition, we dealt a lot with the chronically homeless, and also homeless veterans were the big thing there. And this guy, all I remember is everybody called him SpongeBob. But so we're in Charlotte County, North Charlotte County, and we housed him in this because it was low income in Punta Gorda, but at the end, like way down in Punta Gorda, where you're almost, going going to cross over at the airport. Sure, no, it was Punta Gorda. He wound up. He would bicycle all the way back to come back. He just didn't stay there because he was the exact scenario.
Yep.
He wasn't around anybody he knew, and it wasn't working for him until we finally housed like 2 other
those are the
veterans there.
clients that you definitely I'm not sure how it works with you guys in identifying, who, if we're asking those questions, would you want to be housed with somebody else?
Yeah, I think I know they asked them, do they want a roommate or do they prefer to be alone, rent a room? Yeah.
It's absolutely necessary because just like, I know when I first moved out on my own, I wanted a roommate. By the time I was 32, I was done with the roommate game and I I didn't need a big house. I needed my own house.
Right.
I
Yeah.
didn't need 5 pools in an apartment complex. I needed somewhere that was close to a Publix.
Right.
Okay.
So Teresa, that's the rapid rehousing. It's called the rapid rehousing rental request form that I give you guys.
Right.
So once you identify that they're ready for housing, that's the questionnaire you go over with them, and then that's what you email to me, and that's when I know that we're gonna start looking for housing for them.
Right. And those are like.
So, and that asks all the questions: what county they want to live in, but
Right.
That's awesome. Can you email me that? I'd love to.
It's a really basic form that I even told them, I'm like, this isn't pretty because this isn't for any agency thing. It's just for me. But yeah, I'll email it to you.
Yeah,
it's just there's no like letterhead on it. There's no Salvation Army thing on it, but it's just a little questionnaire that I made. So
no, it's great. It's those little things that as we work as a COC, and other service providers, that maybe there's another service provider that isn't asking those questions and isn't, getting all your ducks in a row before we get ready to house a client that, if you're able to provide that, they'll be like, oh, this is awesome,
Well, Natasha actually had one. Natasha started it. And so I just kind of went along the same lines as she did. I added a few other questions just from experience that I realized needed to be on there. So, but she did do that. She had sent all the agencies one of those. So
cool. That's awesome. Okay. So then we have done our, we went through, we looked through our client profile. We called the client. We're going to add them into our program pre-enrollment project. So I hit that add entry button. Our type is basic. I'm going to select it wrong.
Oh, I was going to say, is that what I'd be putting basic now?
Yes, you would.
Oh, I would? Oh, okay.
So anytime, Teresa, you see something that says no entry assessment has been specified for this provider, if there are not questions in this area down here, then you are in the wrong type. All you have to do is scroll up to the top. And typically you guys your pre-enrollment project is always basic.
Okay.
And then your just about every other project, your rapid rehousing projects and the PSH projects, those are HUD. So the point is, though, is that if you do not see any information in this box, you're in the wrong type. The only thing you have to do is go up to the top and select a different type until that populates.
Okay.
Okay. And then here we can see the contact attempt. And you can add that because you're going to say that you called. And let's say that we're going to make this a simple successful attempt. Client. Located outside TSAS in office for pre. Okay. So now if anybody, goes back, or say you guys, like Jessica was saying, you have those clients that have been in there since September, we'll be able, your supervisors will be able to see how many attempts, how many times you guys tried to contact the client. And it goes back to that CYA and show your work. If you're not showing your work and showing your activities in CSIS, then you cannot presume that your case manager or your supervisors are, they don't know what you're doing. We all got our own stuff going on.
Really?
Yeah, right? What? So then we're going to go through here, and we are going to respond to all of the questions, every bit of information, whether it's populated, especially if it's populated, because as you know, if Brandon had already, Brandon's information typically from the access point will carry over to this field, to all of these questions are already going to be answered for you, but you don't know when that information was collected. You don't know the integrity behind that data. You want to make sure that the data you are entering is the data that you are entering, the information the client is telling you. So
I remember you saying that the last training, that's something to always check and make sure that, because things can change.
That makes me so happy, because
I do remember
know what people retain.
I retained that. You said it, and it was like, okay, that's very important.
The inflection definitely helps. And if I breeze by it, then so I'm going to fill this out as if it was already done prior. So this is what the information is. Let's say this is what the information is when you go to enter Brandon, and you don't even have to look twice at it, because you're going to ask every single one of these questions. It doesn't even matter to you what this data says, because you didn't ask these questions, really. So let's make sure that we ask them. So Brandon is himself. He is a head of household. And then it says here, household type, family without children. Well, you got the referral for Brandon, and you know that Brandon is an individual. He's telling you that he is himself. He does not have anybody else that he is being housed with. So you're going to change your household type. That's the first thing that you found that was not true for today.
Oh, okay, I see.
So you change it to individual.
Okay.
And we're not changing, we're updating, right? Because
updating.
One time, the client's information, maybe he wasn't at the time of his access point, he was with his girlfriend. But since then they broke up, and he doesn't want to be housed with her. So he is by himself. Happens all the time.
Right. Now I did. I thought, actually, that was, I remember when you said it, I said, it's something that you might not think of, but when you said it's like, oh yes, everything can change,
Oh,
and I mean, not except their name. I mean, it could change their situation. I think even the homeless status, like where if they sleep the night before,
that changes from day to day. I mean, our clients can be anywhere on any given day.
Right.
For instance, this client, the last time he was in our system, his prior living situation, or where did you stay last night? So that's that question. Prior living situation, where did you stay last night?
Right.
That is, don't even think of prior living situation. Think of, where did you stay last night?
Yeah, I'm writing that down, because that can be, that's, I would just look at that and say, oh, that was priorly where he was. But when you say, where did you live? Where did you stay last night? Well, yeah, he could have been now in the shelter and out of jail. So
absolutely. And that's what we're asking the client. Where did you stay last night? And that's across the board. Does not matter if you're in program pre-enrollment, EH bonus. We are updating that information upon every client's entry.
Right.
Okay. So you are typically only asking this question upon entry. So even when you're doing your interims, you're maintaining that, you're not updating that information.
Right.
You're going to maintain that, where did you stay last night? But prior, and this, so your prior living situation, where did you stay last night? Brandon says that he was in a place not meant for habitation. Maybe the shelter was full, and he had to stay, you know, he was across the street. He was just hanging out with his friends, sleeping on the bench. His length of stay. How long have you been in that place meant for habitation? So this is where we get a little tricky with our data consistency.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, because we're asking these questions live, and sometimes we can look to this approximate date homelessness started from the access point, and it might be valuable data. You know, we can't presume to know that whether it's good or not. So we're just going to ask either way and ask Brandon, when did this approximate instance of homelessness begin?
Okay.
So Brandon's been in our system for a really long time, and we have data to support that as well. That's how he got referred to your project, right?
Right.
He's one of the, he's of the high acuity of need. So he is appropriate for rapid rehousing. His homelessness started June of 2019.
Okay.
That's when this instance of homelessness started.
Mm-hmm.
He was in a place not meant for habitation for 2 to 6 nights, but this homelessness has not been broken up. And we have data to support that. We have many shelter stays. We have many activities in the system to support this instance of homelessness beginning now and not being interrupted by a stay of 7 days or more.
Okay.
So you're good from there. You're going to trust that this is correct.
Okay.
Regardless of where they stayed last night, the number of times Brandon's been homeless. So we'll say that this is Brandon's second time. He had a time previously in 2018 that he was homeless for a couple months. Then he was housed temporarily with a friend. And then around June, that's when, you know, the friend put a kibosh on that.
Okay.
So then the total number of months homeless. Well, we already know that this instance has not broken up since June of 2019. So that alone is 12 months or more.
Right.
Plus the number of months that happened in 2018. So we already know that it's going to be the response of more than 12 months.
Okay.
So we want our last zip code of last stable address. It's all zeros here because the person didn't ask the question, or maybe it was in here and they just kept it moving. They don't care. But you want to make sure that you're entering your data. So we're going to use the zip code for the Salvation Army Sarasota because that's where he's been mostly since his homelessness began. It's just a way for us to geo-map the activities in our COC. We are using zip code information more and more to do different activities. Like Brandon's able to, I'm not going to go in the weeds of it, but he's able to do some really cool stuff with geo mapping and zip code information. So
I didn't know that I'm sorry, I didn't know that we could use the shelter's zip code for that. I thought it had to be their last stable like residence.
Well, so it's kind of like it's still up in the air as to how, if the client knows their last stable zip code, so you say when you were with your friend, where was that address? And he said, oh, it's 34237.
Right.
Then that's what the zip code is. But if the client, like as you know, some of our clients have
most of them don't know. Yeah.
They don't know.
Even if they knew where they lived like 4 years ago, they wouldn't know the zip code.
I mean, I can't. I mean, I think I
don't remember the zip codes I've lived in. So.
I'm just fortunate because I've only at least in the last 5 years, it's like 3 zip codes. But
so if they've been staying at the shelter and they don't know otherwise, it's good to put the shelter zip code.
Okay. Yeah, because we're going to want to map these highly concentrated areas of entries. You know, we're going to want to map where clients. But if we're talking about, so this is, again, it just depends. If you were doing an HP project, Jessica, I would say absolutely use the zip code for where they're staying because they're housed right now. We know that they're housed right now. And we're using that zip code information to identify high concentrated areas of evictions so we can potentially target funds to those neighborhoods and target funds that's what COCs are doing across the nation, is using this zip code element to target funds to lower income neighborhoods so they have access to these funds. So yeah, again, if they've been in a long-term homeless situation or they don't remember their zip code, then if they're by the shelter more often than not, or if they're down south in Northport, then you're going to want to use some type of zip code down there to show that activity. So what is y'all's zip code right now? 34234? 232? I can't even remember.
34.
I know that 17th Street is 34234 because that's why I worked forever.
Okay, we'll do that then.
First I showed 34236.
It's 36. Yeah, I'm looking at my business cards that I
That always confused me, but okay.
That's what it says on here, yeah.
Okay, so then again, Teresa, this information in your medical information, income information, this might already be filled out, but you don't know it to be true. So you want to always check your HUD verification, whether this, excuse me, has a green check mark or not. You want to make sure that it is true because your data, your name is attached to this data, and you want to make sure that it's good data. Okay. So we're going to ask, does the client have a disabling condition? You're asking Brandon these following questions. So we're going to auto-populate our no's, but again, your clients will have already answered these questions. Right. You're going to, so let me do this real quick. Let's pretend like it had already been answered. All no's. So you're going to ask Brandon, do you have alcohol abuse, alcohol and drug abuse, a chronic health condition? Do you have any developmental disorders, any drug abuse? Have you been diagnosed with HIV or AIDS, a mental health problem, or a physical health condition? So Brandon has identified to you that he does in fact have a mental health problem. Well, you see here that this information is a mental health problem says no. Right. So you want to make sure that you click that pencil to open up that record set. And so typically this would be older information. Let me see if this will work. Okay, so that was the start date. You always end your information for the day before you're starting new. Okay. And this, oops, sorry. This would actually be 10/31/2020. If this lets me do this. Excellent. So we see that you ended that old mental health, and now we want to say yes, that Brandon does have a mental health disorder, and it is expected.
Oh. Okay, so I see you can't just change it.
No.
Before you have to end it on, say, it was that date. Oh, okay. All right.
Because if you end, so this physical is a no right now. Somebody else created this no. Right. And it would be like if someone handed you a piece of paper with information on it and you went through it, you wouldn't scratch out what that person wrote. Right. You would say, actually, no, this is the correct information. Okay. And that's true for today. That's the same thing. Consider all of this as electronic pieces of paper, and that you can't ever just scratch something out. You want to make sure that you're adding your data. You're saying this data is old, doesn't make sense, it's not true anymore. Okay. Today, this is the data that makes sense.
All right.
Okay, so from here, we're just going to say that Brandon has a mental health problem, and he's been, working with it, but you're going to connect him to what's over by Coastal, so he can get back onto some medication, because really maybe that's what's causing a lot of these ongoing issues with Brandon. He's not regularly getting treated for his depression. So we're going to exit from there. And then now we can answer, does the client have a disabling condition, yes or no? So maybe before it was a no because the person before you didn't ask all of those questions. They just presumed it. Or maybe Brandon wasn't comfortable sharing that information with them. So now you can respond that, yes, in fact, Brandon does have a mental health condition. Same thing with income. We're going to pretend that this already no, 0. So this information, again, putting in our imagination hat, was already entered in here. So you're going to HUD verify, and we see all no's. You're still going to ask each of these individual fields. Do you have any alimony or child support, earned income, general assistance, At this point, Brandon is coming into the project without any income. You know that, you know, he's capable. You know, he's telling us like, I'm capable of working, but, you know, I just haven't gotten a job yet. I don't have anywhere to shower. I can't change my clothes. I can't get a job while I'm literally homeless. It's pretty difficult. Right. So you say, okay, that's fine. You've verified all of that information, though. You didn't just presume that the data in here is correct.
Right. Okay.
So all of this is correct. From here, for domestic violence victim or survivor, maybe it was left blank, but you are going to respond to this information because you know how valuable it is. You know that your data is going to be complete, current, consistent, and correct. So Brandon identifies that he is not a DV victim or survivor. He is not pregnant. He is not a registered sex offender. He is not currently abusing any substances. And he does not currently have a housing voucher. From here, I would presume that the VI SPDAT is in here for you guys to review the VI SPDAT, or are you guys completing new ones?
I think Andy's general rule is a year. If it's a year or more, if it's been a year or more since the last one was done, we need to do a new one. Obviously, if anything's changed. So once you get to know the person, if you're realizing that a lot of the questions that were answered no, probably should have been yes, like they're exhibiting mental health issues, or then we'll do another one. But yes.
And what does that mean, VI SPDAT? I keep hearing it and nobody, I don't, yeah. I know it's one of those things that's just on another.
Well, and you know, Teresa, if you're not doing the VI SPDATs and you don't have an EDA into Access Point, right. So it does make sense that that kind of would fall through the cracks in the onboarding process. So the VI SPDAT is the Vulnerability Index Prioritization Assessment Tool. It's a tool that is used that org code created with a bunch of other lawyers. This air quotes mastermind, Ian DeJong, created this list of assessment questions in order to ask clients so that we can appropriately assess their experiences while being homeless and connect them to the proper housing intervention services. So clients are, they will have already completed this assessment by the time that you are connected with them. You will be able to go in and review this assessment. This will have already been completed for your clients. But as Jessica said, there are often times that maybe the client's intake was done a year ago and significant changes have happened since then. I know one of our CEO, and he used to be the program director of sorts at Salvation Army Sarasota, Chris Johnson. One of his biggest goals was clients come into the homeless response system identifying as maybe a 4, meaning that they haven't had a lot of traumatic experiences while they're homeless. They don't have a lot of addiction, or they haven't used some of these hospital crisis services, and whatever the case may be. They enter the system as a 4. But by the time that they're referred to a rapid rehousing project, they have experienced quite a bit in that year's time. And now they're a 9, 10, 11. And they're no longer able, their acuity has risen quite substantially because of their experiences. So that's where we want to reassess the client if in that time there's been a significant change, or a year is good, but I would even, you know, if you're updating it through program pre-enrollment, if it's been 6 months that's also, I think that's okay because you're already receiving that referral, right? It's not going to affect the client's prioritization status. It's not going to affect where they are in the system. It's just going to help you, Teresa, understand the client's experiences more.
Right.
But also take into account that this is a lengthy assessment. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go over it. I highly recommend you going into it and reviewing it in the system, and then org code is where you can get some background information on the client. I'll send this to you as well. There might be some of the stuff is free. Some of the stuff you have to pay for. Training that doesn't suck. That's funny. That's my line. But there's some different information in here that you can look at and give yourself some background on the system.
Okay.
But what I was saying, if you are going to go through the process of doing the VI SPDAT again, keep in mind that it is a lengthy process, and maybe at like first visit, depending on how long you've been working with the client, you're not always going to get the best information right up front, because you're definitely you're going to want to build that trust so the client is more willing to be honest with you. A lot of times that we find with clients in their VI SPDAT, they minimize their the impact of the homelessness in their trauma to kind of tell you what you want to hear. They think that being honest with this VI SPDAT and these responses, it will reduce their chances of getting into housing. You're going to always tell someone what they want to hear to get what you want. Not always, but depending on the person that happens. So just keep that in mind when you maybe add it as something that you're going to do at the next visit, or maybe another visit. Internally, how you guys decide to handle that is up to you. But to me, it makes more sense that you would build that trust and rapport. We're going to complete another VI SPDAT with a client so that you can get more realistic idea of what the client's experience is.
Yeah.
So, awesome.
Okay.
So we'll pretend that there was a VI SPDAT score, and Brandon, we're going to give Brandon, he's cookie cutter today, just in the interest of time. And you can tackle those, interesting stories as they come up, and then you can train me. Because it happens, the client comes in as a 4 and then you reassess them and they're a 10. And
it's happened. It's happened.
It's happened plenty of times. And our clients are, what do we do? If they came in as a 4, if we house them in this service intervention, if we got them connected with the right wraparound services like coastal recovery, or the client, again, of course, they do not have to be on medication. They do not have to be sober. They do not have to have a job to be housed. But if we do get them connected to those things that they were connected to prior to homelessness, can they return themselves back to that 4 or less? There was a point in time in my life where I would probably be identified somewhere in a 9 or 10. I've taken this VI SPDAT as the person I was in 2014, and I was a 9. And if I took it now, I think I would only answer 1 of the questions, and and I would be a 1. But we definitely don't want to be ruling the client out or creating barriers based on their experiences, because if they entered the system as a 4, they've become a 9. What can we do to get them back to that?
And I think it's just I think they're afraid sometimes that if they say in the beginning that they've had issues or they're with drugs, or that they're afraid it's going to hurt their chances.
Absolutely, 100%.
And
you guys have there's Jason Lux over at the Salvation Army Sarasota, and he is a very impassioned person that I've spoken with at length about the experiences of clients and how being on the other side of the table. And
he doesn't work here anymore, by the way.
oh,
He was really good though.
Yeah,
was
he
very-
left us. So
Oh.
Yeah.
just to let you know, because you were talking about it.
I hope that we informed Amy so she could remove his user license.
Oh, does she not know? No,
I
I mean,
don't
she knows, but
Hopefully, because that's
I'll remind Andy.
I'm sure he's already told her, but
I hope so.
just
I'll double check. You never know.
yes. There's a lot of things that happen and things fall through the crack. But anytime a user's employment is terminated, please be sure to notify Suncoast Partnership CSIS admin so we can remove their license. Either way, he was a very impassioned person who had a lot of his own ideas about the VI SPDAT and clients' experiences and their willingness or unwillingness to tell their story. But keep that in mind. And I do go over that in basic skills often is you, Teresa, are telling the client's story through your entries. You are telling the clients how you got connected with the client, what you've done with the client to get them connected to the documents or the services, or what action steps the client's taking to be housed. And the different, we should be able to go into a client's CSIS record and read their story like a book through the data you enter and the notes you record. Every client has their own chapters in our continuum of care, and you are telling Brandon's story. So keep that in mind as you record this information, that it all adds up to the big picture, really.
Right. Because other people aren't seeing him. I am. So you're depending on what I put in there, what any case, manager would put in there to know who he is or what he's like, or
Absolutely. And especially when it comes to monitoring, and that's how case studies are created. You read those case studies in psychology journals or even on the HUD website, and these, different activities and instances where COCs use these different tools to, reduce the trauma on clients by using this tool. It's all based on the data and the stories that are reported and supported in CSIS or HIS, depending on your local whatever. So we are going to say, let's kind of be a little realistic and say that it took a couple days, but we're going to enroll Brandon into our rapid rehousing project. So Jessica, Teresa would be adding herself as a case manager under the rapid rehousing project and not pre-enrollment, or would she be adding herself as, would it matter? Would there be, if she added a case plan while pre-enrollment was going on?
This is where it gets sticky for me, and I kind of have questions for you about it too. So I think what they've been doing is they open themselves up as a pre-enrollment case manager, and then the day that they put them into EH, they would end the case manager as pre-enrollment and open case manager as EH.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Does it matter? I mean,
no, it doesn't.
Because I think what's happening is they're just leaving themselves as pre-enrollment, and they're forgetting to go in and change it. So that's probably an issue though, right? Because they need to be opened as an EH case manager.
It makes sense to the outside observer. But if you're able to keep track of my clients, because you're my clients, like your case manager tab and that counts report, it's looking at your name and not the provider.
Okay.
So it's looking at who you are and not what project you're working under. But it does, if you want to show that real time, I was his case manager in pre-enrollment, and then that ended today. 11:04 because I'm exiting him. Completed program. His destination, let's say he's got a Q life or he's going to stay at the shelter because he's being case managed, right? Client, we're going to write a little client note. EH, staying in Q life.
Does that make sense to you to do it that way, or do you have a suggestion on?
Hold on one second. Okay, so client, so you would not, so upon exit, you would say completed program, where he's staying. So even if he's not staying in the shelter, maybe he's staying, maybe you guys have extra money for motel vouchers, who knows? Or he's staying on the streets, then you would exit, tell that story through the exit, save and exit. But yeah, then you would have pre-enrollment project. And you ended it for that date because you exited him. We're going to change our hats.
Okay.
And make sure that we're entering as EH, not EH bonus, just everyone's home. And we have, I'm going to add your counts report.
So Jessica, at what point would we do this? That's where I'm confused. At what point do we exit them from the pre-enrollment and put them into the EH?
That's all right. So that is one of the things that we discuss on Fridays at our rapid rehousing case manager meetings. But typically, just so you know, that's whenever you identify that this person is ready to be housed.
Okay.
That is when you send me your rental request form, and that's when they would be opened up into EH.
Okay.
But we always have that conversation on Fridays before you do it.
Okay. So I always exit out, always have to exit out and then start again in a new program.
And that's my other question for Lauren. So if they open a case plan and set goals and pre-enrollment, and now they're opening them up in EH, do they have to redo all of that, or is there a way that information can transfer from one EDA to another?
Let's see.
Because I think that's some confusion right now.
I'm just going to do this real quick, guys.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. Teresa. Let's pretend that this is one. Let's actually do. Okay. And then I am now everyone's home. So you should be able to
change the service provider.
Yeah.
Or the
and
top.
You can see, so what would happen, because you guys because your pre-enrollment project is under the Salvation Army Sarasota, as long as you have access to that project, you will be able to see those notes.
Okay.
You can click on that pencil and see that it started in pre-enrollment. But then if I added a case note,
you can change it.
You can change it to everyone's home.
Okay.
The client accepted into EH. Client will begin working towards housing, job, coastal referral. I don't know why I capitalize that. Documents needed. I'm just seeing what this will look like.
gonna look up somebody that they just did and see what they did.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a feeling they're probably both doing different stuff.
So then okay, so then you added a note under your EH, and your notes, you guys are really like top notch when it comes to recording notes and showing what's happening. Yeah. I'm your monitor, I promise. I don't say stuff that like Holly does something, or she was at one point, she was doing like the housing stability plan and she was breaking her notes down. I don't know if it's because we were requiring it or if this is just something that she does still, but it was like the objectives. Okay, so here's the thing though. Let me focus back on the case plan and the case. We started on pre-enrollment, right?
Mhm.
So if the client is now entered into EH, we want to change the provider to EH up here.
Mhm.
It's not going to change this pre-enrollment note.
Okay.
But it will change when we go to add case notes.
Mhm.
That it's under that everyone's home hat.
Okay.
So
that is how I pictured them doing it, but I didn't know if Andy and I both questioned if they were allowed to go in and change that provider.
Absolutely, because it's still, so the thing with these case plans, for me, and the way we train these, is each of these goals, if we were acting and we were in a non-digital place, each of these goals is its own manila folder with all the case notes and all the activities and all the services. This is the client's folder. This is everything that has happened with that client. So building on one folder is what makes sense because you can go back and see from the beginning of time. When we start adding different goals, then you're creating new folders that it's like, well, I know I talked to this client on this date about this, but now I have to go into like 5 different folders to find that one note and what was happening. And especially in the monitoring and review process and your supervisors auditing and monitoring your activities, if they're looking all around in 5 different folders, you're creating a margin of error. You're creating a place where miscommunications can happen. So it is important that, yes, you can start the goal under one provider, but once that client's entered into that other provider, you click that pencil and change the provider at the top.
Very easy. Cool.
Yes. So then everything and all the activities are still taking place under one folder, essentially, one plan, and it's just built on top of it.
Okay, perfect. Did you understand all of that, Teresa?
Yeah, I'm just I understand about the notes, building on those notes. So when you take them out of the pre-enrollment, we exit them out, enter them into everyone's home. You went to like the edit with the pencil and you had to change this provider up there. It didn't automatically change when we entered them into that?
No, I had to do that. And
that would be under goal where you have to change. Okay.
Yep. So that's at that top level, the goal.
There. Okay. That was confusing me. So now I get it. Okay.
Because if we were, so when I initially had it set as that, let me just change it back real quick. When I initially had the provider set as pre-enrollment.
Right.
And I went to add a note. So say like we were just coming in here and we were adding a note, but we were under EH. I'm entering data as everyone's home, right?
Right.
But then I went to add a note. My provider was pre-enrollment. I was like, well, I can keep changing it here, But in order, we don't want to keep changing it. Let's just go to the beginning of where the goal is set and who's now we are the provider, this rapid rehousing project.
Okay.
And save and exit. And now when I go into adding notes, and this is going, because we're not ever going to enter any notes under pre-enrollment because the client's in our project now.
Right.
So we add our case note. Now we're under that EH. You'll still have to populate that you are the case manager.
Right.
But, and actually, I'm not sure if you're.
I'm not in there.
Well, no, you're in here because that's.
Oh, am I?
Because I'm shadowing you. I think that because I'm shadowing you, your name isn't defaulted to come up. I don't have the privilege to write case notes or to act. I could shadow you, but either way.
Okay. So you don't lose that pre-enrollment notes that are there when you do it. That stays there, but now it's in the new provider, the new program.
Absolutely. And then it does make sense. There are times like when we're talking about adding different goals. So Jessica's goals are different because her goal is to identify housing. Right. So it does make sense to me that of course, this is for every agency to decide, because Suncoast Partnership, we can just provide the guidance and what makes sense. How you guys decide to operate is, up to you all. If Jessica's the one with all the notes on the housing, it does make sense to split those two folders up because the conversations related to housing and the conversations related to case management can be quite different. Right. You are going to want to have your folder and all the notes on what the client's doing to increase housing stability, what we're talking about with their budget, anything like that. But then with our and Jessica would have set herself as a case manager for housing.
Right.
Having this move to permanent housing, she's identified it, and then her notes exist separately.
Okay.
Just so that you're not confused, Teresa, we don't do it that way.
Okay.
So I don't set any goals. You guys are the only ones that set goals. And what you guys do is set the goal of, I don't know what they put, to achieve permanent housing or.
So I don't have to, every time I meet the person, I don't have to click add goal. I could just build on the case notes. Yes. All right, because that's what I was asking. I was confused about that because every time the goal changes to add a new goal.
No, we're just going to want to build because each goal, remember when you add goal, you're adding a new folder. So you're going to have another folder with one note in it. That doesn't make sense.
Okay, that's what, okay.
Yeah, so they put for the goal, they put classification housing and then they put type new housing. And then we will both case note under that. So I'll put my case notes and then if you have case notes as well, because like you guys are giving your rapid rehousing clients assignments to go out and look at housing.
Right.
So when you meet with them and they're doing that, you'll put your case notes in as far as housing is concerned as well.
Right.
So I will never have a separate goal for me, just so that you know.
Okay. Because I was confused about the goal thing, because it's like, well, why do we keep adding a new goal? Because the way that I used to do it was, I never had to do that. It just add a new case note. So
what they do is they're going to do new housing. And then once they're housed, they do a second goal, which is maintain current housing. Right. Maintain current housing is where they're putting all of their case notes and they break them down.
Once they're housed.
Once they're housed.
Right.
And you can look at both Bridget and Holly's clients and go in that. Remember I gave you a list of clients to look at.
Which I did. Yeah.
What they're doing, but yeah.
Jessica, who are you looking at right now?
I'm looking at a bunch of different people because I'm trying to find one that's like the way that I want it. Trying to think of who is a recent person that we have. Oh, probably Richard Halloy. Let's hope that he's correct. Let me see. This has been an ongoing issue between Bridget and Holly doing things differently. And it was never, nobody really ever cared, but I started caring because especially because we have Teresa here now. And so I think that everybody should kind of have a basic same way of doing things. I mean, there's things that you can do differently, but at the core, we should be doing this. Because I monitor as well, and I know you monitor. So when I'm trying to monitor and everybody's doing different stuff and I don't know where to find things, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Why aren't you guys doing this the same? And I guess in the past, nobody noticed and nobody cared. So
yes, it's definitely
we're trying to change that. Is the
That's great. It's one of those things. Go ahead.
So I'm in 319143, which is one of Holly's clients. That is an EH.
Okay, great.
And I'm not promising anything because I haven't looked at it yet. So, but hopefully it has some semblance of the way that it's supposed to be. So, and I'm glad I'm asking you these questions because now I'm going to go back and tell them that this is how we're going to do it, regardless of how they were doing it. I don't think they ever had clear direction as far as from pre-enrollment to EH and how that looks with the transition.
Right. So that's what, so if you look under his case plans, and I'm seeing this how Teresa, because I'm shadowing Teresa in the live site. So Teresa, you can also, this is a client, as you can see, the provider is this pre-enrollment TSA Sarasota, which might be confusing.
Right.
So for Holly to change that would be to go in and change it to
which she will.
And then I don't think it's necessary to, otherwise she'll have to go back and edit every single note.
Right.
Oh, okay.
But once you can see that the client's entry into EH was on 10/16, so you can see that this is,
So that should say.
If she were to go back and change the provider from the date that she housed them or from the date that she put them in EH, does that affect your data on your side?
Case plans will never affect the data on our side. You guys are always safe from. The only data that we pull off of is entry exit based and service based. So all of our reports, all of our
I never knew that.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. There's no timeliness when it comes to adding case plans.
Okay.
There's obviously no UDE or consistency. We can spot inconsistencies in case plans because of the notes that are recorded. But and if you were going to add, like, if it does not affect our data if she changes it to EH, and also if she changes it to EH for 10/16, it will not like change this.
Right, but if I had her go back and change that because I'm OCD, would that affect anything on your end?
Not on our end.
I had her go back and change the service provider.
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay. To EH from the date that it should have been.
Yeah, because I thought everything stayed in pre-enrollment until because of the
way that it's recorded, because the way that it looks here.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That'll be cleared up going forward. And if Holly wanted to go that extra mile and edit every single note to change that provider to everyone's home, then that's up to Holly or Jessica or whomever.
Right. But she would have to go through.
But you're saying that it's not necessary. So
it is not. No. But and then going forward, as long as we remember to edit as soon as we enter that client into our regular rapid rehousing project and edit that case plan at the very top level, then everything will go under that provider type.
From that day on, right.
Exactly.
Okay.
So then you guys, so that's awesome though, is that everything is under you can see weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of, and look, so Holly has it labeled as, this is what we're talking about for housing. This is what we're talking about for medical. You can see Jessica's under this EH provider. So she that all the notes that Jessica's writing is specific to housing. And Holly has identified in her notes where they, what it's specific to.
Right.
Which
So
is
yeah,
cool.
so basically they should just have two goals, Teresa. They're gonna have a goal before they get housed, and then they're gonna have a goal once they're housed, and everything's gonna go under that goal.
All right, they're getting a job,
Really
because
easy.
that's where the confusion was. Like, I thought, well, if I asked, well, what about if they want to get a job? Well, that's another goal. So that you had to add another goal, but I don't have to add another goal. That would just be built on into my case notes that
One goal.
like right, the goal we'll talk about,
I would just
employment.
like how and then
Right. That's the way Holly's been doing it, where she labels it.
Right, and then I like that, and then just you could enter and then put another if there's like that medical.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So two goals.
And so hopefully when you monitor us next year, all of our case notes are going to be beautiful, just like this.
Well, hopefully I will be monitoring next year, because it's one of like my least favorite parts of the job. I always feel like such a bad guy, and it's like, I'm sorry, I have to do this. I know you guys are doing the best you can.
Well, sometimes it's just miscommunication. And like I said, because when Nicole was in my position, God bless her, I love her, but these are things that they just were never told. And so they were just doing it however they thought that they should do. You know what I mean? Because nobody told them any different. So
100%. And it is very admirable that you're taking the initiative to keep things consistent. I am a very consistent minded person. If it were up to me, it's already not up to me, but if it were up to me, regardless of the provider. So if you're JFCS Rapid Rehousing, Turning Point's Rapid Rehousing.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Your notes, the formatting is the same. The entries are all just all the Rapid Rehousing entries and the assessments in them, they are about the same with like nuances, especially when it comes to veterans. We're going to be asking veteran specific information because it's required by the VA. Right. But when it comes to case noting and providing services and all this other thing, everybody should be doing the same thing because we're providing the same service. The only thing that's different is the client, because each client is different. Your approach is going to be different. You might be able to give one client a laundry list of objectives, and they thrive off of that. They want something to do, and they're ready to get this, and they're over this type of, situation. Whereas other clients, we're going to have to come, with, soft hands approach and take things very slowly and easily. But you will be able to see each approach through the case notes, and you can see what works and what doesn't work. Really, it's just a better way to evaluate and analyze the data. But, maybe one day, who knows? You would have to get everybody in the whole COC on board to do.
Good luck.
You never know. I mean,
you never know. This is true.
I appreciate I appreciate that. It definitely, it makes more sense. That's all of this is supposed to do.
Makes sense.
HMIS is not supposed to be complicated, confusing, frustrating. This is a place for you to, Teresa, as you work in it, and I'm sure Jessica can attest to this, that when you first start, it's like, what? But then just like anything else, as you work in it, you become so comfortable. You're clicking away, adding services.
It's been 2 years. It's been 2.5 years, and I'm still learning new stuff. So it's an ever changing process. But yes, I am much more comfortable now than I was 2 years ago.
Absolutely. So do you guys? We can start the entry-exit process into everyone's home, and then so where did we go here? Let me do back to our agenda. So we did program pre-enrollment, engaging with the client, and now we're entering client as rapid rehousing. We did some of this stuff, but let's kind of run through it again. And then,
I do all of the financial services, so I don't know if that helps any, because I do all the check requests and everything, so that's not a big thing for her.
That's great.
Just trying to help you out a little bit.
No,
And
and
that's a whole nother, like, that's a whole nother beast.
absolutely. And that's where a lot of that's where we get a lot of data inconsistencies, and having one person do that financial aspect of things, you know that things are being entered complete, correct, consistent, and current.
Right.
So that's it. When the more people you have doing different things in the system, you know, take it off of my plate, whatever, I don't care, as long as it's done right, kind of thing.
Yeah,
so
that's a new thing. So I can't
do
attest to anything that happened before COVID, but
Mhm.
since the summer I've been doing it. So hopefully it's getting done correctly.
All right, so then we'll switch back to. Okay, so let's throw them into EH rapid rehousing.
Okay.
So what are we going to do here? Whoopsie, selected the wrong type. Your EH projects are all HUD.
Okay.
And then even though you know that this data is data that you entered because it's carrying over from what you did in the program pre-enrollment, still things may have changed. Maybe the client's actually, he stayed in Q Life last night. He's no longer in emergency shelter. So, or I'm sorry, he's no longer in a place not meant for habitation. So we're going to update that into emergency shelter, and that he's been in that Q Life for, we'll keep it at 2 to 6 nights, just because it's consistent to the client's story.
Okay.
Or actually, we'll say 1 night, but it's still consistent. So when it comes to your entries into the actual rapid rehousing projects, this information is uploaded to the, what is it? It's your APR. It's uploaded when we use all of the data in rapid rehousing projects in a multitude of reports that go directly to HUD.
Okay.
So oftentimes when we are at, not the caper, but there are other projects that if your prior living situation is anything other than a literally homeless situation, it will come back, it will bounce back to that agency.
Okay.
So it's very important to keep that in mind, but also just as important to keep that information consistent with what happened. So for instance, in your EH bonus project right now, and this just happened, we had clients that were previously housed in a different funding source roll over into a new funding source to continue providing those services. So those clients, upon entry into that rapid rehousing project, were in a rental by client with rapid rehousing subsidy. So when we submit that data, at first HUD's going to be like, what? That doesn't make sense. But then they open the opportunity to provide that narrative that says this project was sustaining the housing placements for clients that were previously housed in another rapid rehousing project. But still, we want to tell that story. All of this client stories change at any point in time. We cannot just presume that, sure, if the client was still in a place not meant for habitation, that information would still be correct, right?
Right.
But we just want to make sure that we are asking, regardless if you just answered these questions 4 or 5 nights ago, that you are still asking these questions to ensure it's valid.
All right. So, don't assume
Never.
that. Right. So every time I meet with them, go over these
in the entry, in the beginning.
In the entry, right?
When you are entering clients into projects.
Okay.
I was muted, but yes, I was saying not every time.
I know. Okay. Yes, I just want to. Yes, an entry. Okay.
In your entry. So when you click that add entry button, you know you're going to be asking these questions again.
Okay.
And most of the time, they're gonna, you know, just nuances of data will change. Like he was in a place not meant for habitation, but because he's being case managed in your project, I believe that's how it works. You guys have a bed for him, or you open a bed for him. If he doesn't, he's like, no, I don't want to stay at the shelter. COVID, you crazy? I'd rather take my chances on the street. Not that I'm saying anything about the shelter, but people have their own.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
people that do that, right?
Yeah. It's just everybody, it's client choice, goes back.
They don't have to, yeah, Teresa, they don't have to stay at the shelter to be housed.
Yeah. Okay. So they could be living on the street still, as long as they're coming for their appointments. And,
Yeah, Holly has clients that she meets with out in the community because they don't stay at the shelter or they don't want to come to the shelter. I know she's met somebody like at Perkins before or Starbucks, you know what I mean? Like, so they're not required to come to the shelter to be housed.
Okay.
It's excellent that you guys have that that resource for the clients. There are I mean, I always stress this in our access points. There are COCs across the nation that do not have emergency shelters at all. And they're supposed to function as a highly functioning COC, and they make it work. They come up with different innovative strategies to make it work. But they're just, we're very fortunate that, you know, our rapid rehousing provider is also one of our rapid rehousing providers is also one of our emergency shelter providers. So you can provide that safe place, which can definitely assist in keeping the client.
It makes them so much easier to case manage. They're right here. You don't have to go find them anywhere.
Right.
Exactly. They build that rapport, you know, and you're able to see them and say, hey, how you doing? And keep track of them and all that stuff. So there is this portion right here is not on your entry into program pre-enrollment. So what this says is housing move-in date is a required field that are in any permanent supportive housing or rapid rehousing program. For clients that are in any permanent supportive housing or rapid rehousing program. For rapid rehousing programs, this field should be blank upon entry, then updated once the client is housed through an interim update or the exit. So keep in mind that this will be blank upon entry unless the client is like a rollover client into another housing project. But we're not training that. We're training that Brandon is still literally homeless.
Right.
So this is blank. We will update this when the client becomes housed, which we're going to show in this training.
And you are responsible to do that, Teresa. I don't do that. I don't do the move-in date, just so you know. But you might assume that I do, but I don't. So you pay attention on how to do that.
Okay.
Absolutely. And then we do have, it's in the step-by-step guides is adding interims to show the housing move-in date. And also we're going to increase Brandon's income in this training as well. We're going to house him and increase his income on the same day, just in the interest of time. But of course, these instances can happen separately.
Right.
So going through here, we see that there are new questions that weren't on your program pre-enrollment project, and they also weren't on the client's access point intake. So the information like covered by health insurance. We're going to ask Brandon, we click on our HUD verification, auto-populate to no, and then ask, do you have Medicare, Medicaid, state children's health insurance, VA connected medical services, employer provided health insurance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Brandon does not currently, like many other millions of Americans, have health insurance. So he is going to say no to all of these and save and exit. Then we know that we can answer covered by health insurance. We're going to say no. We're going to scroll. We know that Brandon still is not connected to any income. You've talked to him a couple times. He is working or not working, but he's building his resume and his submitted applications. He just hasn't heard anything back in the last 5 days, and that's okay. Our non-cash benefit information, same thing. This question is not asked on access point intake or our pre-enrollment project. So this might be the first time that Brandon's being asked this questions. It may not be, but this is the first time you are asking this question. So you are going to HUD verify whether there is information here or not. Go down the list, auto populate to no. If Brandon is not currently receiving food stamps, this is always something that I highly recommend to add to your case management step-by-step guide. Food stamps, no client should go without food. If the client is not currently connected to food stamps, begin that process with the client. It is
Right.
I myself was on food stamps at one point. It is a lengthy application process that might be overwhelming to the client. And if you are able to assist in that, by all means, go ahead, Jessica.
That is something I mean, you've been shadowing Holly, so you probably already know, but that is something that you guys typically will try to get done while they're still in the shelter. If they need a social security card, an ID, food stamps, anything like that, that you can accomplish while they're still here.
Right, I know that. Yeah,
okay.
I know that Holly's been doing it. I've never seen it. Like it's because she's already done it. So I've never seen it done.
But you'll be doing that, so.
Right.
It's again, internally, I don't know how you guys handle that, but those are getting the client connected to these mainstream benefits like food stamps and getting the client document ready with social security number and ID definitely makes the process more, it helps the client. I mean, let alone assisting Jessica and the rest of your case managers getting the client into housing. So right now we're going to say that no, he is not currently upon entry, but that's also something that we're going to update in the interim. So scroll. So this is again, Jessica, and if you guys ever have any information that you want removed from your assessment, because this is specific to your Everyone's Home project, if any of this information is decided that you want removed, I've seen this before. I don't know how regularly you guys use this. Have Andy or, get with Andy and Amy and say, hey, these questions are in here, but we don't use these for anything. We can remove them. All of your
So the checking, the savings, and the higher education?
Yeah.
Those aren't mandatory questions?
We added these questions based on a request from the Salvation Army Sarasota, but that could have been 5-10 years ago. If you guys don't regularly use these questions, it makes it inconsistent on our end when we say answer every question and then they go back and you guys say, oh, you don't have to answer that question. So
we typically tell them to answer all the questions. If it's asked, answer it. I mean, you don't ever really, why would you ever skip a question? But I'll talk to Amy and Andy about it. I appreciate you letting me know that.
Absolutely. If it's found that there are any questions in your assessment, in any of your assessments that you guys don't utilize anymore, just let us know and we can change it. We can not change it, but we can update it and customize your assessment. Brandon does not have a car. He walks. See, I'm not really familiar with the family services score. He's a 9 in his VX score, though. We're gonna say
we don't use that. So is that something that we even need to have?
You tell me.
Right, so all of these questions are not. These are all up to us. Whether or not we want
these are specific to this assessment.
Starting with.
We do not use these scores, all of these highlighted fields. We don't, the entire COC does not use these questions.
Does anybody know this? I bet you some people don't even know this that I work with.
They probably haven't been
like, say what? We can take those off. Yeah, we can take those off. Okay.
That's why I love doing these trainings because I'm always
so funny. Okay. Yeah, get rid of it because if it's probably just causing us more problems than it's worth. Yeah. Okay. Yay. Awesome. We'll get back to you on that.
Yes. Please send me a formal email. Otherwise, if I just
we'll have Amy do it. But yeah.
Awesome. If I just start changing your assessments, it's gonna be like, what's Lauren doing now?
Jessica said just take everything off.
I know. All right. So we know that this is still we'll leave this like that because we'll see in the CSIS record that the client is in Q Life. So we're just going to leave that until the client is housed. We're going to save and exit. We go over to our case managers tab because we had ended ourselves as pre-enrollment. You're going to add yourself as Everyone's Home. and save. Your case plans, this is when you're going to want to update. I'm going to delete this one and change this. But this, when you hit that enter button, we're going to say that you started it as that, right? Not as the case management type, but as how you guys do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would have updated it to be your everyone's home provider from pre-enrollment to everyone's home. And you're going to begin doing your case notes however you see fit. Selecting yourself. Client is in housing. Client will ... medical. Client will ... job. Client will ...
Okay.
And then you'll be able to just continue to build off of that folder. If you wanted to add acts, this is a great place where if you had actually told Brandon, so Brandon will fill out 3 applications by 11/10/2020. We'll say Wendy's, Publix, USPS, or we'll say UPS. Just a wide range.
Okay.
Say that's in progress. UPS actually hires felons. I don't know if you guys have the list of places that hire felons, if any of your clients are ever concerned, but there's if you just Google this, I saw it actually on Facebook, and it was a list of places that hire felons. And
Chris actually had me do that. It was probably over a year ago, but I made a list and I sent it out to like everybody. So that's actually a good thing to think about updating that. It might have changed since because it was probably a year ago that I did it.
Absolutely.
But there's a lot of places. The list was like pages.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be good to know because that's a couple of our clients.
Oh yeah.
It's an issue.
And it's the best way of saying this. Clients, because their experiences have left, bad taste in your mouth, you feel very defeated, right? I mean, when I was applying for jobs personally, I was right out of college. I applied for so many, city, county jobs, and I never heard back anything. I was working at an agency, but I kept trying, and I ended up volunteering at the Salvation Army Sarasota because I knew I wanted to work in this industry, and I figured, all right, well, if I volunteer, they can see that I'm smart,
Right, yeah.
And I was actually interviewed for the housing specialist position in 2016, right around Angel Tree. And I was like, wow. But then the position was closed because they didn't get the funding for it. So then I was like, okay, well, I actually need to start making money, and started at a temp agency. But my point is that, if I had that door kept getting slammed and slammed and slammed and slammed, then you just give up on yourself,
Yeah, it's very discouraging.
It's so discouraging. So
especially if they have something like which
that's why a lot of them will go to day labor, because they know that they can go to day labor and work, and a lot of them are traumatized from applying for jobs, and so that becomes like their job. And obviously we don't accept that as a as a career, but that's why they do it, because they know that they can work there. So it's true.
So we can get a list, Jessica, of these like places that hire, because we do have.
I will get that for you.
Yeah,
I will do that.
Absolutely. And it's all about, reinforcing that sense of value that that client may have lost with themselves.
Right.
There's this the webinar for FHC that I'm going to send you, and there's others, but Amanda Rosado said it best, is that if you go into case managing a client, thinking that they'll fail, they will.
Right.
It's the power of the mind and your delivery. And if you believe in the success of every one of your clients, and that's where you guys really, your agency, and I don't know if it's the mission behind everything, but your agency goes into so many interactions with our clients knowing that they can succeed. There's no doubt in your mind that they can't succeed. That really produces the positive outcomes that you guys regularly see. Yes, there might be clients that do return to homelessness this time. Maybe the next time we try a different approach, or maybe that client just wasn't ready right now, whatever the case may be. But we're talking about, of the 80 clients you serve, 5 or 6 that may return to homelessness. You guys have a very high success rate and retention rate at your agency. And I firmly believe it's because of the way that you guys case manage your clients. You go into working with the clients with the belief that they will succeed, they will get office assistance, and you'll connect them to the appropriate services that they need to maintain that housing.
I think everybody can. I know, but I also
Teresa is one of those very positive people already. She believes in every single one of the clients. She's very positive, so she's right. She fits right in here.
I do, because I've been in situations where where I a single parent and I had 3 kids and I had nowhere to go. Thank God my parents were alive at the time, but I was in a situation, before, like when I had to move, I couldn't find anything I could afford, and I was like, I had nowhere to go, nobody to live. So yeah, it's really scary, and not being able to get a job, and then COVID hit, and then it was like, wow. And I started volunteering at the Salvation Army of Venice at the food pantry, just to be productive or do something and not be so depressed and being stuck in my home when so I can't really, I don't know what it's like to have drug charges or felony, but I can empathize that it's got to be really discouraged, feel defeated, and they feel like, well, who's going to hire me with this? And so it's good to know, like, I do believe that it's possible for everyone to
Absolutely
use, and so
please
hopefully I maintain that.
Don't lose that. Don't lose it. Don't become disenfranchised.
Yeah, I don't think I will. I just, I have a deep faith in God, and I just do believe it, and it may sound corny, but with God, all things are possible. And
that's probably because we all are believers in God. And I'm saying everybody that I work with and work around here, we have really strong faith in God. And maybe that shows through our work and our case management.
I think it does. I mean, I monitor the COC, and you see even the language that is, used in case noting, and keep in mind, that your supervisors are, not punitively, but just so that they are aware of what's going on with your caseload and what you're experiencing with your clients. Just when we're using different language too, let's use empowering language. We're not saying drug addicts. We're saying, what is the word that, substance abuse survivors, or, whatever the case may be, an active substance abuse, or whatever the case. There's a lot of different language that is different from, negative language and empowering language. And it really, your delivery, and it impacts the client's outcomes. Of course, every client's story is dependent on that client's activities, but whether that client believes in themselves is definitely, affected whether you believe in them. It's just like your personal trainer. And we have to remind our COC of this all the time, that if you wanted to, not even lose weight, but maintain a healthy lifestyle, and your personal trainer was like, can't do it. I've seen that donut that you eat. You do this, you do that, you've done this. You were 300 pounds last May. You can't do it. Not many people are motivated by that.
I'm going to go buy some more donuts now and eat donuts because
do it.
You're going to hit that F it button and never see that person again, So coming from a place of yes is definitely empowering. But I do want to focus back on so we added an action step. I don't know if I wasn't talking through it, but with our action step, I added a follow-up, projected follow-up, so that you're going to check and see if Brandon has done this activity. You said that you're going to follow up with Brandon on the, we'll follow up actually on the 8th because we asked Brandon to complete these resumes by the 10th. So we provided this action step. This is the action step. This is the target date. It's currently in progress. And our follow-up date, we're going to check back on. It's at our next case management session, but you want to remember or set a reminder for yourself to check on this action step.
Okay.
This is something, again, that internally you guys can decide to use regularly or not at all. It's just a little tool that you can have under your belt to keep track of things.
So every time, like, you would give them a specific, say, a task, a specific thing to do, that would be put in as a case.
Absolutely.
An action step.
Yeah, if that's something you wanted to record, you would list it in your case notes. And then if you wanted to record it separately as this action step, then you can absolutely do that there. Everybody's different. Our TANF, go ahead, Jessica.
I'm looking at like Holly's client, like her action steps were Jessica will identify housing for client. CM will help client apply for new IDs. CM will help client apply for SS card. CM will help client apply for Medicaid. So she's doing those things, and then she puts her target date, and then she goes in and puts if they achieved it or not. So that's
right. Yeah.
So they are using that
for everything. Yeah.
Good. It's one of those things that, you know, you can use it or not, but it is an organization tool that can break down, because when we're talking with our clients and we say, get a job, whoa, like, if I was told to get a job, there are many steps that I will need to take to be broken down. I need to update my resume. I need to, you know, devise a cover letter that, you know, speaks to, you know, whatever the case may be. They break it down into these, you know, granular steps.
Right.
So it's not so overwhelming. Just like maintain healthy lifestyle. Well, what does that mean? That's a big thing. Does that mean that I have to stop smoking? Do I have to put, you know, only eat one donut a day or one donut a week? Like, I'm not ready. So it breaks it down into these granular steps that aren't so overwhelming. You know, that was a big thing in our COC when we would have clients come in to be housed, and then we'd have a laundry list of activities for the client to do. Get your ID, just like 10. And then you have 2 weeks to do it. And it's like, nobody can do all that in 2 weeks, especially somebody that's literally homeless and has no cell phone. They may not have a library card, so they can go. I don't know if the library is open right now, but if it were, they couldn't go into the library to use the computer to get on the website. They don't know which website to even be looking. So break it down into these steps that
easy, you know, manageable steps.
Exactly. From your goal, you can add service transactions from this goal. So say you've recorded your case note, you added your action steps, and you want to add your case management service because you want to show that you provided a case management service on this day with this client. You can add that straight from the goal by clicking on the add service button down here. So when I click add service, it's saying this will close the goal pop-up and take you to the service transaction page. You're like, okay, sounds good. From here, it takes you straight to the service transactions page. You'll do your service type, and because you're lucky enough to have Jessica maintaining all of your financial services, you only have to do your case management services. So you select from your drop-down that case care management and save and continue. From here, you're just simply scrolling to the bottom. You don't need to add any other information on here. you're going to close your need and fully met because you provided this case management service.
Okay.
From there, you just save and exit.
Okay. Okay, good.
If I'm going to go back and show you the other way to do it. So we're going to go into, we're in our case plans. Say that you weren't in that part, or maybe you were in your, you added a case note just because you can, if you're not going to open up the entire goal, to open up the entire goal and look at that whole big page of things, you click the pencil. But if you're just adding notes, you can click on the notepad and build from there.
Okay.
And then you want to add your service. You click on your service transactions tab. And this dashboard actually should show up first. So you click on the service transactions tab, add your service. And then this is the same page that from the goal it took you to. So you can case manage, save and continue, same steps, scroll to the bottom. You don't need to add any information up here.
Okay.
Close. Oops. Fully met, save and exit.
Okay.
So there's two ways to, well, and then you can also do it from the summary page, but don't do it from there. So there's two ways. One is kind of more efficient if you're actually in that goal and you're gonna, add it from there. Or if you're in, the client's entry exit or the notes, whatever, and you want to go to the service transaction page.
Okay.
From here, we're gonna flash. I'm gonna actually exit out of backdate mode. We're gonna go home, and we see. What? I don't know why Brandon's not showing. Okay, Brandon is your client. Good. We see our action step that we had Brandon. Remember, we did that follow-up and we wanted to check. Okay, so I'm going to backdate and say that we are actually on the 10th or the 8th. And you see your action step right here. If you click on that, it will take you right to that action step.
Okay.
And then you can ask Brandon, you're on the phone with him or you're meeting with him. And Brandon says that, yeah, he actually did it. And he obtained a job at the UPS store. And he's going to begin working there. And he's doing deliveries because he has his license. Thanks to you. He never lost his license. He just didn't have an actual copy of it. So he did that. And so you, in order to take that follow-up off your homepage, you say that you made the follow-up and the completed follow-up date was today and that he achieved his goal. Okay. We're going to save action step. And then we can add a case note. You are the case manager. My keyboard is not speaking to my computer very well today. Indicates and we say client indicates or client informed me. We never say client claims. Claims is one of those big words that is a no-no word. It's presuming that what the client is saying is not true. That's thing, but however you want to write. But
very good advice.
It's claims is it's a negative word in my opinion. He has been hired at UPS to deliver packages, whatever the case may be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, we would have, even under job and then medical, this would just be, you would still have a case management session, but in the interest of training, that's what's happening. Okay. We're going to use this date And with your clients, when they obtain income and they get jobs,
Okay.
I'm not really sure how you guys reflect that, what like the time period is for clients, how long you guys, like if the client says, hey, I got a job at UPS, I'm going to start delivering trucks. If you guys wait till that first paycheck comes through, or how you guys determine that.
Oh yeah, we don't get rid of them that easy. Like,
No, I mean recording the update, recording the interim. Like, do you guys?
I thought you meant with their rental assistance. I'm sorry, I'm reading messages from. Yeah, I'm like, no, we stop helping them as soon as they get their first paycheck. We're done. Bye. You're on your own now. I'm sorry. Repeat the question, please.
Recording the interim to show the increase of income.
That I do not know. Is there a time? It should be done right away.
I think it just depends. It makes sense to
get the first paycheck, because that's the only way that they'll know how much
their net
income,
and
right?
their budgets and everything like that is.
So that makes sense.
I'll say that. So
well, let's go with that answer.
It makes sense to use the
I'll ask Holly and Bridget.
And you know that they're probably, it's just one of those things that there isn't a set, time frame where, but it does make sense that upon the client's first paycheck that you are reviewing that with the client, because you're creating budgets with your clients too. You're creating this information so you can actually look, because yes, somebody's pay rate might be this much, but their net income is substantially different. We should never be having a budget based on your gross salary, because that's not actually what you're living off of.
Yes, I know. That's always bothered me with everything.
So, and we have to keep in mind, like, I think that's where you're going to have this advantage, of course, is, working with our clients the same way that we would want someone to work with us. You want to be literal in the fact that, yeah, maybe you're making $1,000 a year, but your take home is actually 28. So we need to budget that you're only making $1,200 a month.
Right.
So that's what we're going to say, that Brandon's take home paycheck, and we have his paycheck to, of course, we're not going to get that within 5 days, but I'm in the interest of our imaginations. We're saying that we are adding an interim to show Brandon's, and you do not have to record. You can take notes on this, Teresa, but I do have a step-by-step.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yes. So I
do
have
taking notes on everything.
It's okay.
I'll say a whole notebook full.
So just kick back and absorb. We do step-by-step on the interims, and I'm in the process of doing one for adding services as well. So at our interim review, we want to show that we've increased Brandon's income, or Brandon's increased his income. We hit this little under the interim tab. We hit this notebook. We add interim review. To show his increase of income, we're going to keep it just as an update. We don't have to be specific in the drop down of it's 30, 60, 90, 120. Right now, we're updating that Brandon increased his income. So we save and continue. We scroll to the bottom. Brandon's he's still literally homeless. He has not been housed. He's going to be housed in a couple days, but he just hasn't been yet. Has COVID-19 affected your ability to gain or maintain housing stability? We can answer this question right now. If you'd like, again, I'm not sure internally. It makes sense to be asking this question probably, especially if you already have clients in a rapid rehousing project where COVID has in fact affected their ability to maintain housing, or we had a lot of clients that were in rapid rehousing projects that were inching towards exit, and then COVID-19 hit and everything.
That happened here as well. Their jobs, a lot of them, they lost hours or they got laid up. Yeah, that happened.
Yep. And so we want to reflect that in interims if we haven't already. We definitely, and that won't be affected by your timeliness if you do have to go back in time. But we want to show through data in our community, if asked, how many clients' housing stability was affected due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This is the data that we would pull to show that response. So Brandon actually, he's a no. He's going to say that he was actually able to get a job in all of this mess. So we're going to scroll to our income information. Scroll down here. We click our HUD verification. We're going to change. We're going to end his no to earned income for the day before. So we're on 11/12. We're going to end it for 11/11/2020. Save. We see that that is now incomplete. We're going to say yes here. And that Brandon's monthly amount is $1,200. This is how much money he makes every month. We're going to scroll to the bottom and exit. We're going to say that he's making $1,200, which is still less than 30% AMI, and he is receiving income from any source. So we're good here. We also have connected Brandon to food stamps. Maybe he's only making or getting like $60 a month, but hey, it puts food in the refrigerator, right? So we're going to put end our no here for food stamps. Same date, 11/11. And say yes, that now Brandon is collecting food stamps. It does not ask you how much, it just wants to know that and this is also a performance measure, while your clients are in project, what are we doing to connect them to mainstream benefits like SNAP, like SOAR or SSDI, Medicare, Medicaid, whatever the case may be. What is our COC doing? How many clients that enroll in this is actually something that is on our applications for federal funding. What is the percentage of clients enrolled in your rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing projects that are connected to mainstream benefits? So this is how we pull that information, is by showing this. If it's not recorded in here, then we can't show that it's done. It's all about showing your work. So we save and exit. And now we have a yes. This is wonky. Make that look. And then also, if you guys are not using this in your interim, Jessica, we can get rid of that too.
Yeah, I think we're going to get rid of that altogether, but I have to talk to the powers that be.
Of course, just let us. Okay, so then we've reflected Brandon's new income. We've reflected that we got him connected to non-cash benefits. This is still where we're at right now. He's in a Q life bed. We're going to keep it that he's outside just because the system is showing that he's in Q life. We're pretending. Okay, so now we're going to reflect that Brandon's been housed. You, of course, would be recording all of your notes. I'm not going to keep creating fake notes because in the interest of time. So we're going to house Brandon. We're going to say that it is 11/18. And that Jessica housed Brandon, that all the services are in there. She's taking care of adding all of those services. Does Jessica scan the lease over to you guys, or?
I scan the lease into CSIS.
You do that. Okay. So
yes. I will notify them what the move-in date is. But yes, all of the housing paperwork I complete and I scan. So it'll all be in CSIS.
Fabulous. So then, Teresa, you receive an email from Jessica, and she says, client Brandon was housed, client 1 was housed on this date. Please add to CSIS, or you just know what to do because you attended this training. You want to add your interim. Again, we go into the client's entry in the interim. Add interim review. For our housing move-in dates, and this again is on your step-by-step, so you're good here. You want to reflect the housing move-in date under the interim review type housing status update, because there are many different interims that will be created for the client. Clients get jobs, get connected, lose benefits, lose benefits. There might be 15 different updates in CSIS, but for us to find the housing move-in date, you're going to just identify that as your housing status update. Your eyes are going to instantly go. If you want to check to see when the housing move-in date was added, your supervisors can look for that housing status update. That is the type for this interim review. We're going to scroll. Your housing status is at risk because the client, if they do not receive, they're not stably housed. They got it. They're under
What? No,
okay, so Jessica, I wasn't sure. So
I thought once we house them, they're stably housed.
okay, so no, they are not stably housed. Stably housed. Okay, I wasn't sure if you guys were keeping it category 1.
Bridget and Holly may know this, but maybe it's just in my brain. I thought whenever they put the move-in date, I thought they changed it to housed.
So Bridget and Holly should know this because
they probably do.
It originated, and Brandon goes back and forth with whether the client should maintain literally homeless status. But if it's not category 1, it's at risk because without your subsidy, the client would be unhoused. They would return if they were stably housed. The client is to exit stably housed.
Okay, so we don't change. They stay at risk the entire time that we have them open and we are assisting them.
Yes.
That doesn't ever change. They're at risk.
Become stably housed or return to literal homelessness.
So what is the definition of stably housed then? That they're paying their own rent?
Exactly. That they are no longer in need of ongoing services. Even if the client gets off of your subsidy and is still in project.
I
don't think Holly and Bridget know this.
So
I don't think so because just from watching the notes with Holly, I don't think that they might not be aware of it.
So are they changing it to stably housed or maintaining category 1?
I think stably housed.
Okay.
That's what I think.
It's not a no thing. This is just something that I've got, and Brandon asked me when he was in one of my trainings with another rapid housing provider. He was questioning why we would change housing status at all in an interim. So just pump the brakes and I will get clarification because everybody should be on the same page.
Yeah, from my knowledge, when they do the interim to put in the move-in date, that specific interim, when they put in the move-in date, I am under the impression that they're changing housing status to stably housed. Okay. Every time they do that. So and then it stays, and then they stay stably housed the entire time that we're working with them.
So and to be completely transparent, this one element doesn't go to any reporting.
Okay.
So not to be like it doesn't matter.
No, it does matter. But I mean, so are you going to get back to us with an answer or okay?
Because this is something that it's one of those things that Brandon and I have gone back and forth on. My brain and the way that all of this in CSIS should show that progression, should show that client's story, that they entered literally homeless. They're at risk of homelessness because without our subsidy.
That makes perfect sense to me. What you're saying makes perfect sense to me.
And then we exit to stably housed because the client doesn't.
Goal, right. And that's the goal that we're trying to get them to. That makes perfect sense.
I just, with Brandon, it was something more of like, he's never gotten guidance from HUD one way or the other. And so we will get back to you. I'm going to add a note.
Okay. So I don't think I'm even going to say anything to Holly and Bridget, Teresa, just so you know, because it's going to confuse people more. So I'm not even going to address it until we hear back from Lauren.
Okay.
So, I'm trying not to confuse people more than they're already confused.
I
No,
completely
say anything.
agree. Yeah, we'll pump the brakes on this. Follow up. Okay. And then I will, for sure, because I want to teach, I'm teaching St. Vincent de Paul, the same things I'm teaching you guys. My training is not any different.
Right.
Because then again, why we're teaching this same service, the same activity provider, you know, rapid rehousing provider, different ways of doing things. No, I don't do that. I might go slower or faster depending on the person, but I'm not going to change the actual activities.
Right.
So we'll just pump the brakes on this. But the biggest part is adding this housing move-in date. This is where we add our housing move-in date. We're going to show that the client moved into housing, say it was yesterday, which is fine. It's not going to affect your timeliness. You can add housing move-in dates months later. It's not good to do that, but if it comes down, timeliness is not affected by your interims, your case plans. It is not affected by that. So when we look at housing move-in dates, and we're doing, maybe Jessica's doing an audit on the clients that she knows she's got housed. So she has all these client IDs and she's going through, she's going to look at each of those interims for that housing status update.
Okay.
And she's going to click on that and see that the housing move-in date's in and checkbox onto the next one. That's why it's really important to make sure that we are identifying this interim review type as housing status update. It is, it's efficient. It helps Jessica narrow in on, and myself as the monitor, narrow in on when we added that housing move-in date.
Okay.
Of course, adding the correct housing move-in date. So from here, we just, that's all we're adding. That's all we're reflecting. But we want to make sure.
Real quick, I'm so sorry. Let me ask you a question. So it has, within our agency, there's been a question of housing move-in date, as far as a lot of times I'll get the lease started before we actually move the person in. So let's say the lease starts on the 1st of December, but we don't have everything ready, furniture, everything good to go until December 7th. So it has been discussed, and different case managers have different beliefs on, is the housing move-in date the date the lease starts, or the date that we put that person in the house? Date that we put the person in the house? Or does it matter?
I think that I think that that's a bigger conversation, and it needs to be consistent with the COC.
Okay.
Because I get,
I'm glad I asked it then.
Yeah, I'm very glad you asked that. The literal stance on it, where you're like, well, they haven't moved in,
right?
You know, it does make sense, because there's been times, I mean, there are plenty of times where clients are leased up. Well, not plenty, but I'll say, you know, less than a dozen times. Clients are leased up. They've agreed to move into housing, and they self-sabotage. They get them, you know, they do, things happen where all of a sudden they disappear, and the client has a lease. But
yeah, that hasn't happened to me yet, but I do know that sometimes I can't physically get them in because I'm still waiting on the bed or the furniture, and the landlord, you know, they want their rent, they want that lease signed. So sometimes there's a week, you know, if not more, between those two dates. So
literal.
Obviously we try to get them in as soon as we can, but it doesn't always happen on the day that the lease starts.
Okay. So I've got to follow up with, and that might be, these are excellent questions. And again, why I love doing these project specific trainings, because we're able to get down to these very, you know, specific questions that nobody
that come up.
Yeah, come up. You haven't had the opportunity to ask. And you're like, man, I really want to know the answer to that. But then, you know, we forget about it and we never do it. So absolutely. To me, my system performance measure brain is like, do it for the earliest date so we can get the meeting. But it goes back to telling the client's story. We can't say housing move-in date November 1st, but then we have Teresa's notes and the client's exit from shelter isn't until November 15th.
Exactly.
That doesn't make sense. So I'm leaning towards more of the literal move-in date where the client has keys in hand, is living in the apartment.
I think
that makes sense. That's the story. We can't be consistent storytellers.
And you're right, because it'll show that they're still at the shelter, or it'll show, I mean, like, they're still eating at the shelter every day. And so because we have so many different services involved, it's like, it won't make sense.
Exactly. So I'm sure that, and Brandon and Suncoast Partnership isn't the end all be all of, like, yes, we can provide the guidance, but you guys, you guys are the ones doing the work. So I think very objectively, and what makes sense I repeat myself enough times, but tell them the client's story. And if the literal story is that the client has not moved in until 11/17, then that's what the move-in date is.
Annie and Amy might not like that answer, but that's
it's because they have the system performance measures.
I know. I can hear Andy right now, like, why are you even bringing that up? It's the lease date. It's the lease date.
Well, in our training, we'll say that Brandon's lease started the middle of the month. We actually prorated it, whatever the case may be. So Teresa, while you are adding your housing status update in your housing status update interim, you are also going to end this old address because Brandon's no longer outside on the bench. Yes, he's been in Q Life for the last 15 days, but now we want to show that he has moved in to housing.
Okay.
So we end this outside TSAS bench, we save and add another, and then we type in the client's address. And this should match the client's lease.
Right. Okay. Yeah, see, that was the one. And again, my question was about the move-in date, because I know with when we were working with, where I was working with grants, that it had to match the day they moved in, had to match the date that was on the lease. So, but we can put they move, like, when that we add this once they are actually moved in.
This should be done in the same steps as
of ending.
Yeah. Save yourself the trouble and just do it all in one interim, that you're adding the housing move-in date and residence in the same not activity, but the same assessment.
Right. Okay.
And then we save here. So now we can see it goes back to telling the story. We see that progress. We see that progression. That, the client was on the bench, and then, actually I did this a day late, so that. And there we go.
Okay.
And then we save and exit. Again, luckily for you, this is when I would say to add all the service transactions for financial services, but you do not have to do that. You're just going to, anytime you meet with a client, it's presumed that you are having a case management session with them and you want to record those notes. You want to client will do this. What does the client still need to become stably housed? He's got this good job at UPS. Maybe his rent's only $750, so that gives him, some comfort of, like about $500 extra a month, or not extra, but whatever the case may be. You're going to continue to case manage the client, adding services for all those case management sessions, because you want to show your work. That is the only way that we can see what's going on. That's the only way your supervisors can see what you're doing, is by recording your notes. There's nothing, more frustrating from a monitor audit standpoint to say, well, my client, okay, here's an instance. So a client was housed in, they did not have a job, and this was when I was doing grants and contracts, and a water bill for, it's like almost $600 came across my desk to be invoiced. They were invoicing for a water bill for $500 or something like that. So how did this client's water bill get so high? The first thing we do is go into CSIS to see the case notes on the client. the client did not have any case notes in there for almost 2-3 months. It had been weeks since a case note was recorded.
Okay.
What that tells your supervisor or your auditor
I'm not doing my job.
that you haven't talked to your client in that period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just about showing your work. Nobody's like, trust me, and I'm sure Jessica can attest to this, we don't want to go, investigating anything in CSIS. We don't want to be looking for, nobody's looking for mistakes, but it is up to you. Nobody can enter data on your client except for you. You're the only one that should be entering data on your client. You're the only one that should be recording notes. So if your notes aren't in there, then what's going on, Teresa? Is your caseload too high? Do we need, do you need some more support? Is there should we change the way your workflow is? Some agencies have like the last hour of the day, you're doing data record keeping, or on Fridays, you're doing data record keeping. It just depends and what makes most sense to your workflow at your job. But it is a process of getting more comfortable so that you are showing your work.
Right.
Do you have anything to add, Jessica?
No, but Teresa started at the time that you were monitoring EH and EH bonus, and then Amy Barth was sending out the LSAs. And so everybody around here was very tense and very stressed out trying to correct data. And I think it really, Teresa can attest to it, I think it really stressed her out and kind of made her nervous about using CSIS and the importance of data quality and timeliness. And she's afraid she's going to get in trouble if she doesn't put the stuff in right. And so I'm trying to reassure her that it's not, there's not much of anything that's life or death when it comes in here as far as,
no,
I've done it before. I've done it in the past, but it wasn't so, things didn't have to be changed. I guess it was just one program, and every time we met, the case notes would go in. But I'm so afraid of I don't want to make a mistake because I see what can happen when mistakes are made. And I'm like, oh my gosh,
it's not the end of the world.
It is not. And the way I learn is by making mistakes. Right. I did not get in my position, at Suncoast Partnership by doing everything right. I made a lot of mistakes in my life, and even at this job, I continue to we all do, because
I'm on this training right now because of all the mistakes that were made, and I'm trying to learn better so that I don't, it's a continuing process for all of us. It's a learning process for all of us.
Absolutely.
You're not going to get fired for having data, quality and consistency.
Like, oh my God, they're going to let me go. I stressed everybody out.
We won't. Suncoast Partnership.
We won't either. We will not either. Me, Holly, and Bridget are still here right now. So after all that happened.
And that's the thing. And that's why we have, especially in the monitoring process, we have that 2-week time frame so that we can hey, this is what my eyes see. What do your eyes see? And if you see the same thing, then correct it. If you don't, let's figure out, because maybe there's some nuances of something in CSIS that you don't see, and why is that? And that's okay. And it really is, like Jessica was saying, I hate to say that nothing's life or death in CSIS, because in CSIS, nothing is life or death. But of course, when we are delivering services and case managing our clients, there are instances, and, especially when you're working with those clients that are of a higher acuity of need, where your data can make or break a client's story. You're not in that position, but there are other individuals that, we are talking about a client's life here. We are talking about, for instance, the water story with that client. That client resulted into stealing water because they weren't being regularly case managed. They were going to be jailed
Oh my goodness.
because the
Wow.
client wasn't, the case manager had taken their hands off and just walked
Wow.
away knowing
Yeah,
that.
there's a difference when I say that there's a difference between case management and entering data into a computer. And what I mean when I say it's not life or death, I mean if you make mistakes when you're entering the data into the computer, that can be fixed.
Right.
Absolutely.
As far as you
Okay.
case managing the client, that's a whole different
Yeah. And that's what,
ballgame.
that's
But just
really not
entering
even
the
my
data in,
concern.
I don't want you to be
Yeah.
so nervous about putting
Okay.
stuff in
I
that you're
understand.
afraid to touch the computer because you don't want to mess something up.
I know there's an audit
So,
and then that's what I don't want to stress anyone out. I know it's just with
No.
COVID and everything, it's been a very stressful situation for everybody. And so I don't want to come in as a new employee and make mistakes. And it's like, oh my gosh, now we have an
we
audit.
all do, but we all do. It's part of life. We all make mistakes. So
Yeah.
don't be so hard on yourself.
I
And
know.
I'll extend, my role at Suncoast Partnership is trainer, technical support. I wear a lot of different hats. I extend any technical assistance. If you ever enter a client into a project, a lot of times when people first attend my basic skills or even project specific, I'll get emails. And I actually just got one from, another service provider. It said, hey, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I just entered them into the project. How does it look? And then it takes me about 5 minutes to do
Yeah.
a quick audit and
Right.
explain like perfect or,
Okay.
B plus here,
That's
I don't
awesome.
actually assign
Right.
grades, but it's
Mhm.
something that I can say housing status was not changed. This isn't, this
Right.
isn't consistent. And it's just a little checks and balances for yourself to go back. And next time you add a new client, you can go back and fix it right away. And
Mhm.
then when you go to do it on the next client, you're more mindful. You're
know
more
what you're doing,
aware of what's happening and what we should check again just in
Right.
case thing.
Right.
So
And I appreciate even you doing this, taking the time to do this because
I
I
do
feel like
too.
a problem child, but I
No,
really
this has been great. This
you
has been
know.
awesome because I learned a lot of things too. So it's
Yeah.
awesome.
And
I thrive, there are so many times where I I want to make this training like required, but there are only so many things that we can require of people. And so I thank you guys for reaching out and being invested in working effectively within the system, both operationally and data wise, because it all matters and all of it goes to something. And we're very fortunate to have you guys as service providers, as well as being as invested in accurate data and storytelling as you are. So thank you guys. I really appreciate it. And I was able to, I haven't had a training like this in a very long time.
oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while since
Mhm.
somebody actually asked me to teach them how to. Can you teach me how to
I mean, but looking back on it, I almost wish Bridget and Holly had been up because, like I said, I mean, people do different trainings at different times and information changes and then management changes, supervisor change. So there is a lot of times there's just a lot of things that you assume people know and they really were never taught or trained correctly. And so sometimes it's good just even if you've been a case manager, sometimes this is a good reminder and just like a question and answer kind of session. I think this would be really informative for them as well. So
I'm going to do December 8th with St. Vincent de Paul. And then after that, I should be able to kind of narrow it down so that it's very comprehensive. And I can give, into the new year with people or even before then. I have this recorded, but it is 3.5 hours long at this point. So I'm not sure how invested Holly and Bridget would be into listening to all of this.
No.
But definitely something that we can target and get everybody on the same page when it comes to rapid rehousing providing and those little nuances of questions, at least through maybe even, the PowerPoint that I'm developing will be a tool as well.
Yes.
And I'll be able to, send that out to you guys. And if, I definitely like with having it being very specific to agencies. That's kind of why I had asked St. Vincent de Paul to leave.
It's a great idea. Right.
The stuff that I need to train them is just a
Different.
little different than there's some pieces of the puzzle missing in that in that area. So but from here, you know, just to get back into the training, we do keep the client open. You continue to add updates through your interims. Anytime information is changed, you're adding notes through your case plan. The clients will stay enrolled until they are ready to be exited. Upon that exit,
ready to be exited means they're
on their own. They are on their own.
Okay.
You guys have done your progressive engagement. Progressive engagement is where we are tiering clients off of assistance, so that it's not all of a sudden, you know, we've paid $750 a month for 10 months. You're on your own. We want to, you know,
yes.
We want to say
that's never happened before, by the way.
It's happened or it hasn't happened?
It has happened. It's horrible. It's horrible.
Yeah. Well,
so, you can't do that to somebody because they're going to end up right back into homelessness.
Right, because that would be too scary. But yes, doing it incrementally, you know, lowering the amount that.
And you'll always, I mean, and that's another one of our Friday meeting things. I mean, you'll never be exiting somebody without me and Andy discussing it with you first. Well, that's something that there's a lot of time and thought that goes into that and planning. So
absolutely,
you'll always be advised on that.
Through progressive engagement, you know, and it obviously it's impacted on what the client's income is, what their budget is, what their rent is. All of that is taken into account. Some best practices say 30% of your income goes to your bills, whether that be you're paying your utilities and all of your utilities, or you're paying 30% of your rent. And then you jump it up to 50% at, you know, or then 75%. And then by the time that they're at that 100%, they are used to that buy-in. But it's also, do not forget that if you have a client that is responsible for part of their rent payment, to monthly check in with that landlord to ensure that that client is paying that portion. This is something that we just came across from another client that, you know, I'm paying my $200 a month. Well,
that'll fall on me, Teresa, because I'm the one that does the rent checks, and the landlords will let me know the day before it's due. If the client comes to them and says, I don't have my portion, the landlord will know, they notify me. But it's good to know.
I kind of figured,
Yeah, it's always, you know, and then identifying, okay, well, why aren't we able to contribute that? What is it that, and like, you know, of course, Holly makes it sound so cheerful, but is it that you're spending more on crack than you're supposed to be? Or, you know, the way that she says it is so cheerful. It's like,
everything. I know, she always, it's,
you know, let's put our rent money first, the $200, and then, you know, figure it out for your crack money. It's okay, but let's make sure our bills are paid first.
That is hilarious. That's hilarious.
So cheerful when she said that at her access point training, but that's the reality, and that's what progressive engagement is. And it's harm reduction. It's motivational interviewing. When we have clients that, you know, I had a client or a budget that I was monitoring. The client spent $5 a month on alcohol. And I'm like, that is not an honest monthly budget. Because are you getting a beer a month?
You get one Trader Joe's bottle, maybe two. No, even two. A $2.99 bottle of wine. That's it.
Exactly. It's like, it's okay if you spend hundreds of dollars on alcohol, but let's make sure that we're paying our portion of the rent first. And it goes back to, like, I can only help you as much as you're being honest with me. And, you know, you're not going to get kicked out of the program for doing any of this stuff. But we do need to figure out how we can do it less or make more money so you can keep it at the same level. You know what I mean? But you'll go through that and work through that with your, you have a great team that really do have a lot of experience in working with all different clients and different stories. Some clients are real easy and all they needed was a little bit of short-term rental assistance. Like Brandon, he just needed to get into a place so that he could get showered every day, get back on his depression medication, start believing in himself and feeling empowered to get a job, to start working, and then he's exited to stable housing. Many stories are not that cookie cutter, but that's what makes life interesting, right? Your job is never the same. Every day you come, you get to experience something different, and it's a new puzzle, you know? Each client's stories are a different puzzle that we're putting together so that by the time they leave the program, it's more complete than what it was when they first entered. And it's all in.
That's the goal. And that's what, as far as like the case notes, I'm really, I like I said, I've done it before. And the thing here is so every time I'm meeting with the client, every time I talk to the client, I'm going to put that in as a case note, right?
It makes sense too, yes.
Yeah, because
even for yourself, when you're working with more than one person.
To keep things on track and know where they are.
You have 3 kids. How many times do we get confused with who's who? You know?
I will think they're all older now, but yeah, I used to call them all different names, and I used to like, you know, I even called my son the dog's name once. So
all the time. My nephew's name is Grizzly half the time. Because nobody can. It's Grizzly Butters Dylan. That's who I'm talking to.
Yeah, eventually it gets there. So
anytime that you meet with a client, it makes sense to record a note. But if it's just a check-in, you know, and even just check-ins, if it's a simple like clients doing this, but it will help you when you go back, you know, the next week, because you've got a million other things, both in your personal life and professional life that you have to remember. Do yourself a favor. And I mean, I don't know if you're a sticky note person, but our COO, she has sticky notes all like wallpaper her office, you know.
I try not to, but yes, there's 2 sticky notes on my computer right now, just so I know my phone number. At home, I have sticky notes on my cabinets, you know, don't forget to do this. And yeah, I'm kind of, but I think it's good because for me, you know, I would just like to, you know, put a blurb in, even if it's something small, if I see a client or if I talk to them on the phone, because honestly, I can't remember things I did yesterday at home. Like, what did I eat? You know, I can't remember. And so
100%.
So for, you know, for myself, it's just figured, just, it doesn't matter to me. But with a client, it will help me to do it just every time I talk to them or have something to do with them, because like you said, you know, having, you know, more than one client, but right now I know the clients we have, but I'm always like, okay, which one has this? So I have to refer back to my notes that I've been taking, you know, while I'm, you know, and watching her, so that I'm taking notes at the same time. But it's so easy to be like, okay, which one was that? And so
100%.
Yeah. So now this has been very, it's very helpful. So
great. Well, I'm just going to exit Brandon.
Okay.
We tell his story through his exit. And of course, you know, if Brandon happened to pass away or if he went to jail or, you know, we just want to make sure that we are telling the story through the exit anytime possible, you know. Sometimes like our clients that just up and leave, they're out. Or maybe Brandon was in the project, but while in the project, he was reconnected with long lost sister, and she, you know, she needed a help and he was happy to be there. It just, you want to tell the story so that it's consistent. And then from here, this is his destination. So of course, you know, if he wasn't successful and he was returning to the shelter, or if he was got into a criminal situation, then, you know, we have all these different options. But we're going to exit Brandon to a permanent housing destination. And so we have rental by clients, all these different rental by client options. But we want to make sure that we are using no ongoing housing subsidy. The client is being exited from our project and he's assuming that he's not getting a subsidy anymore. Of
Right.
course, if the client was, say he was housed with rapid rehousing, and then we connected him to the non-elderly disability vouchers, and we were going to enroll, he's already been enrolled and accepted, and whether he moved or not, whatever the case may be, you still just want to make sure that you're telling that story through
Right.
that. These are still positive outcomes. These are still positive destinations, but we're keeping the data consistent with what's happened with the client.
Right. Okay.
So we're just going to say Brandon just regularly old left, or, you know, he's on his own.
Right. Okay.
And then we save and continue. And then in my mind, this is where we housing status,
Okay.
house.
Mm-hmm.
And as you can see, even in the interim and the exit, you were never asked, where did you stay last night again? Because that only matters upon entry.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then any of the information that's changed, maybe Brandon, you know, he's been so blessed, they gave him another raise, and you'd want to reflect that, you know, upon this time, the exit, if you hadn't already, or something along those lines. You can still add updates to the client's story through the exit.
Okay.
Especially if their income increased, make sure that you that you don't forget to put that in there.
Right.
That is important information.
Even if Brandon had, so Brandon was working at UPS, and then he got another job making, you know, just he was working part-time on the weekend somewhere doing something. If he had 2 part-time jobs, that combined income would fall under earned income. You wouldn't have 2 separate earned incomes.
Okay. You just add it together.
Add them together.
Okay.
That was something that I just learned.
See, Lauren just learned something too.
When I was in training with Amy on Friday, but it never seemed that it
never came up.
It never came up before, and she was, because I gave the example that Brandon was working 2 jobs, and
I said, "What do you do with that?"
She was like, "Oh, don't add 2 earned incomes," and I'm like, "Oh, whoops." So from there, you know, you, depending on the project, of course, and depending on your agency, sometimes we have post-exit follow-ups that are required. I always recommend.
I require a 30-day follow-up at the very least. So
for yourself, Teresa, if you have a post-exit follow-up that you want to remind yourself with, I always recommend hitting that pencil and adding an action step for yourself.
Okay.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to do post-exit follow-up. And then you're going to do, so you're going to do it's 30 days, post a 30-day, let me add. And you identified it, but you want to make sure that you make that 30-day post-exit follow-up within that time frame of the 30 days. And you know that this is right around Christmas time. So you're going to add a follow-up or a reminder for yourself somewhere in the week before. So let's do the 18th. So that way, this projected follow-up date is in that time frame. It's within a week's time frame of when that follow-up is due.
Okay.
So then you save your action step. You save and exit your case plan. Whether you end yourself as a case manager, I recommend waiting to end yourself as a case manager until the post-exit is done.
Okay.
And then when we go back home, you'll see this action step for your follow-up.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask you, where would that show up? Okay.
So anytime you have follow-ups, you can have it right here. And then depending on how many clients you have, it'll be filtered by the time remaining. So if you had follow-ups due next week, those would be above Brandon's. They work in chronological order.
Okay. Okay.
And then we'll say that we're going to fast forward that we are in December. you're going to say that you have done this or you're about to do it. And that you achieved it, because this is for you. CM will do. Save and exit. I'm going to go forward in time. Oops. I don't know if I can go forward in time and backdate mode. Yeah, no, they're like, that doesn't make any sense. But you can. So in our entry exit, we go to this follow-up right here, just like we add our add follow-up review. We do 30-day review. This I can go into the future. And it's a basic assessment. This is where, but we want to add this information because there's no sense in doing a follow-up if we don't actually add any information.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So we add a follow-up, and this is what's asking, what is it? It's a 30-day review. Did we call? Did we send a letter? Did you do a home visit? What were the results? Did the client, yes, still in home? And you dropped by and you gave Brandon a call. You can end that. And now you've done post-exit follow-up.
Okay.
And then if anything has changed, maybe Brandon wasn't in the home and that you called and you stopped by and you contacted the landlord, then you would reflect that information. You would say 30-day, not home, move, no longer in residence per landlord.
Okay.
Does that affect data quality, the data at all? No.
No.
That wouldn't show like they returned.
No. The only thing that triggers a return to homelessness is if Brandon had entered into a homeless related. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So if Brandon was exited from rapid rehousing and then went into the shelter, even in Salvation Army Manatee,
it'll flag it, right?
Yeah,
okay.
that would trigger a return to homelessness.
Okay.
So you did your follow-up. You can save and exit, and then now you can end yourself as a case manager. And you're good.
From beginning to end. I love it.
Yes, it was very, very helpful. Yes, I feel so much
that was
better.
amazing.
I'll probably be referring to these notes.
You can rewatch it. You can sit in your office and rewatch a 3-hour training anytime you feel like.
Well, she's going to have something for me to. I have my notes.
Yes.
You can fast forward through.
Yeah. But no, it was because I think that's what I needed. I needed to see something from the beginning to the end because I was seeing a piece here and a piece here and actually
it's very
not
confusing.
anybody. Yeah, so it's nice to have it just, this is how we start, this is how it goes through, and this eventually, I haven't, seen an ending, but that it's just, have a cohesive thing to look at instead of like, oh, here and here, bits and pieces. Yes. I'm trying to put it in the right order, just because I'm very organized.
And this definitely has helped me. And I will be able to give you guys a PowerPoint that you can, of course, you won't have the funny dialogue that we all do, but you'll have a PowerPoint to show, okay, this is where it starts, and this is where I had something, but it was like 2 years old, and it was very specific to issues that we were having in other rapid rehousing providers with missing data. So I just completely scratched it. And by the time I got started on it, I was like, this is not going to be ready. So, but no big deal. We'll get it done. And then you'll have it when after the holiday, because who knows, you might forget everything in the next couple of days.
I might forget this tomorrow.
So from there, if you guys just have a happy Thanksgiving and connect with me if you need any assistance.
Thank you
so much, Lauren. I really appreciate it.
Have a great day. All right.
You too. Happy Thanksgiving. Bye-bye.
Bye. how do I get out of here?